Queen Lucia, a 5-part comedy series based on the novel by E F Benson, dramatised and narrated by Aubrey Woods, with Barbara Jefford as Lucia, Jonathan Cecil as Georgie Pillson, and Jane Wenham as Daisy Quantock. Part 1, The Guru.
Riseholme station, Riseholme. Tickets, please. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, Mrs. Lucas. Thank you.
Good morning.
Though the sun is hot on this July morning in 1920, Mrs. Emmeline Lucas, known to her more intimate friends as Lucia, prefers to cover the half-mile that lies between the station and her house on her own feet.
As I shan't be needing the fly myself, Grosvenor, you will go ahead in it to the Hurst with the luggage.
Yes, Miss Lucas.
And I will stroll quietly up after you. Thank you, Porter.
Thank you, Mrs. Lucas.
Dear Riseholme.
The village has but one street, some half-mile in length, but that street is a gem of 16th century domestic architecture. For the most part, the houses that line it are blocks of contiguous cottages, which have been converted into dwellings containing the comforts demanded by the 20th century, but externally they preserve the antiquity which, though it might be restored or even added to, presents a truly Elizabethan appearance. As she crosses the high street, Mrs. Lucas encounters a tall, military-looking man who is taking a pair of elderly bulldogs for their pre-luncheon constitutional.
Good morning, Colonel Boucher.
Good morning, Mrs. Lucas. Very pleasant to see you back again. Riseholme missed you.
After only 6 days' absence. Surely not, Colonel.
Nothing more certain, dear lady. I often say to my fellow members at the golf club, there's no doubt about it, Mrs. Lucas really is the Queen of Riseholme.
Oh, Colonel, you flatter me.
Not at all, dear lady, not at all. Farewell. Come along, Bouncer. Wilson.
Riseholme might, perhaps, according to the crude materialism of maps, be included in the Kingdom of Great Britain, but in a more real and inward sense, it forms a complete kingdom of its own, and its queen is undoubtedly Mrs. Lucas, who rules it with a secure autocracy pleasant to contemplate at a time when thrones have been toppling and imperial crowns whirling like dead leaves down the autumn winds. The ruler of Riseholme, happier than the late Tsar of all the Russias, has no need to fear the heady poison of Bolshevism, for there is not in the whole of that local vat, which seethes so pleasantly with culture, one bubble of revolutionary ferment. Or so it seems.
Morning, Mrs. Lucas. Welcome back.
Good morning, Mr. Quantock.
Pink, irascible Robert Quantock has no aspirations towards cultural supremacy, unlike his wife Daisy, who cherishes certain secret ambitions. But as yet she has hoisted no red flag of revolt to challenge Mrs. Lucas's position. All is calm.
Not too exhausted by London?
London does, as you so rightly observe, leave one feeling quite fatigued. But one breath of Riseholme's clear air restores me at once. And how is your dear Daisy?
In excellent health. We have a visitor just arrived. I must be off to greet him. Excuse me, Mrs. Lucas.
Certainly. A visitor? I wonder who that can be.
Her first possible source of information she encounters outside that undoubtedly Elizabethan hostelry, the Ambermere Arms. Here she meets her gentleman-in-waiting, her aide-de-camp, her devoted subordinate, Georgie Pillson, who carefully raises his straw hat with the blue ribbon, exposing a crop of auburn hair, grown long on one side of his head and brushed smoothly over the bald top until it joins the hair on the other side.
Giorgino, amico, come sta?
Lucia and Georgie, and Lucia's husband, when alone or with friends who have little or no knowledge of the language, are wont to pepper their conversation with scraps of Italian, beautifully pronounced.
Va bene.
Very Benny, now that you've come back.
Georgie, tell me, who is Daisy and Robert's visitor? I know they have one, for I met Robert a moment ago, positively hurtling off to greet the new arrival. But who?
I've no idea, Lucia. None at all.
Cattivo, Giorgino. Lucia must go home, presto, presto, and see if husband Peppino can tell her. Oh, I have ordered the Mozart piano duet, which we talked about. And as soon as it arrives, I want you to come across and try it over with me. I know it'll be dreadful diffy, so kind Georgie must help Lucia.
And Georgie very pleased to help. Oh, what fun it all is.
In order to save subsequent disappointment, it must be stated that there is not, never has been, nor ever will be the smallest approach to a flirtation between Lucia and Georgie Pillson. The baby talk in which they indulge and the Italian endearments which they exchange are the nearest either of them has ever come to flirting with anybody at all. But it is one of the polite and pleasant fictions of Riseholme that Georgie is passionately attached to her, and that for her sake he remains unmarried. In fact, he is quite content to live singly, to do his sewing and his sketching, dust his china collection, and play any number of piano duets with her, but nothing more.
There you are, ma'am.
Thank you, Grosvenor. Ah, home.
You were quick, ma'am. Only just started the unpacking.
Ah, Lucia mia!
Lucia's husband, Philip, always addresses her in the Italian mode, La Lucia, the wife of Lucas, and is addressed in his turn as
Peppino, mio caro.
as he greets her at the amazingly antique door of the Hurst, which, as befits its chatelaine, is the most completely Elizabethan abode in Riseholme.
Ben arrivata! And how was London?
Terrifically busy about nothing. I have scarcely had a moment to myself.
Ah, let me take your coat, carissima.
Grazie. Oh, how restful to be in my own little house again. The lunches, the dinners, the parties. I could not go to half the gatherings I was bidden to. Dear South Kensington.
Well, when London does manage to catch you, it's no wonder they all make the most of you. You mustn't blame them for that.
Oh, no, dear, I don't. Everyone was tremendously kind and hospitable. They all did their best. If I blame anyone, I blame myself. But I think this Riseholme life, with its finish and its exquisiteness, spoils one for other places. No one in London has time to listen.
Oh, yes, how very...
They're all thinking about who is there and who isn't there and what is the next thing. The exquisite present, as you put it in one of your poems, has no existence there. It is always the feverish future.
Alas, cara, my present prose poem on loneliness has not been getting on very well during your absence. In fact, not at all.
Povera Peppino.
Yes, our printers at Ye Sign of Ye Daffodil are awaiting my manuscript at this very moment. Oh, so much to do, as you have often said.
Well,
Cara.
take my life here, or yours for that matter. Well, mine, if you like. Often and often I'm alone from breakfast till lunchtime. But in those hours I get through more that is worth doing than London gets through all day and night.
Oh,
I have an
indeed.
hour at my music, then I have my letters to write, and you know what that means.
Oh,
and I
yes.
still have time for an hour's reading. So that when you come to tell me that lunch is ready, you will find that I've been wandering through Venetian churches, or sitting in Goethe's little dark room at Weimar, or was it Leipzig?
Ah, well,
oh,
now...
how thankful I am to be back in my own sweet library again. I can work and think here.
Of course. And here are your letters, Cara, awaiting you. I did not forward yesterday's posts for fear of their missing you.
How wise you are. London postmen are, I believe, very careless and untrustworthy. Oh, what a pile! Poor Lucia. But I shall be very naughty and not look at one of them till after lunch. Then I will get into the saddle again, such a dear saddle too, and tackle them. I shall have a stroll in the garden until the luncheon bell rings. What is it that Nietzsche says about the necessity to Mediterraneize oneself every now and then? I must rise home myself.
Lucia walks quickly and decisively up and down the paths as she waits for the summons to lunch. She has laid aside her London hat, revealing on each side of her forehead hard, neat undulations of black hair that conceal the tops of her ears. She bears the weight of her 40 years extremely lightly, and but for the droop of skin at the corners of her tight and compressed mouth, she might pass for a much younger woman. Her face is otherwise unlined and bears no trace of the ravages of emotional living which both ages and softens. Certainly there is nothing soft about her. Her eye is suddenly attracted by an apparition on the far side of the road.
Who is that with Daisy Quantock? But it can't be. Oh, do turn round, both of you. Daisy, dear?
Who's that? Who's that calling?
Oh, that's better. But it is an Indian. Can that be her visitor? It's me, Daisy.
Hello, Lucia, dear. Nice to see you back. Must meet sometime. Peace.
Sometime? But I want to know now. And why peace? Peppino! Caro? Who is that Indian whom I saw just now with Daisy Quantock?
Indian, my dear?
Yes. Turban and burnous and calves and slippers.
Really? Well, I don't know for certain, Lucia, for I've not set eyes on him, but putting two and two together, I might make a guess.
2 and 2 make 4. And now for your guess. I hope it is equally accurate.
Well, as I told you in one of my letters, Mrs. Quantock showed signs of being a little off with Christian Science. She had a cold, and though she recited the true statement of being just as frequently as before, her cold got no better. But when I saw her on Tuesday last, she was very full of some strange philosophy which made you quite well at once. What did she call it now? Yoga. Yes, that was it.
So?
Well, it appears you must have a teacher in yoga, or else you may injure yourself. You have to breathe deeply and say Om.
Say what?
Om? Well, I understand the ejaculation to be Om. And there are some very curious physical exercises.
And shall we come to the Indian soon?
Carissima, you have come to him already. I suggest that Mrs. Quantock has applied for a teacher and got him. Ecco.
Ecco, indeed. It puts me in rather a difficult position, for I must send out the invitations to my garden party today, and I really don't know whether I ought to be officially aware of this man's existence or not. I can't write to Daisy and say, "Pray bring your brown friend Om," or whatever his name proves to be. And on the other hand, if he is the sort of person whom one would be sorry to miss, I should not like to have passed over him.
Lucia will never forget to her dying day the advent in Riseholme of a mean little Scotch attorney in whom Daisy had discovered a wonderful mentality. Lucia had refused to extend her queenly hospitality to him or to recognize his existence in any way, and she was naturally very much annoyed to find him in a prominent position in the government not many years later.
And there must never be a repetition of that error.
What was that, Carissima?
What? Oh, nothing, Caro. Just thoughts. Nothing for you to bother your head about.
Mr. Pillson, ma'am.
Come in, Georgino. Now let us all sit down, and you shall tell us the news. Let's have a good gossip.
Now, where shall we begin? Oh, I've got such a lot to tell you. I think we must begin with a great bit of news. Something really mysterious.
Presto, you excite me.
Yesterday morning, I was in Rush's, seeing about some creme de menthe, which ought to have been sent the day before. Rush is very negligent sometimes, and I was just saying a sharp word about it, when suddenly I saw that Rush was not attending at all, but was looking at someone behind my back. And so I looked round. Guess.
Don't be tantalizing, amico. How can I guess? A pink elephant with blue spots.
No, guess again.
A red Indian in full war paint?
Certainly not. Guess again.
Give me your hand, Georgie, and look at me.
Ah.
I'm going to read your thoughts. Think of what you saw when you turned round. Now, yes, I do seem to see an Indian, and he has slippers on and brown stockings. No, not brown stockings, it's legs. And there's a beard and a turban. That's all I can see.
My dear, you're marvellous. You're quite right. Oh, I believe you've seen him. How tarsome you are.
Yes, Georgie, I have. But really, word of honour, I have no idea of what happened next. Go on.
Well, there stood the Indian, bowing and salaaming most politely. And when Rush had promised me he'd send my creme de menthe that very morning, I just looked through a wine list for a moment, and the Indian, with quantities more bows, came up to the counter and said, "If you will have the great goodness to give me a little brandy bottle." So Rush gave it to him, and instead of paying for it, what do you think he said? Guess.
He said, "Put it down to Mrs. Quantock's account."
Oh, Lucia, you're too tarsome. How do you know?
Intuition, Georgie. Intuition. And a deep knowledge of human nature. But go on. Tell me more.
Well, that very day, soon after lunch, I was looking for a letter I thought I had left in my bedroom, and happening to glance out, I saw this Indian sitting under Mrs. Quantock's pear tree. He was swaying backwards and forwards.
The brandy.
No, Amica, it was not the brandy, for presently he stood on one leg and crooked the other behind it, and remained there for quite a long time without swaying at all, so he couldn't have been tipsy. And then he called, "Cella, Cella," and Daisy came running out, calling, "Yes, Guru."
Why did he say Chela?
I wondered too, but I knew I had some clue to it, so I looked through some books by Rudyard Kipling and found that Chela meant disciple.
Aha! And Guru is, I believe, the Indian word for teacher, so that seems to piece the whole thing together.
Yes, indeed. And what did he say to Daisy?
Well, he didn't say anything. He sat down on the ground and took off his slippers and held his toes with one hand while his legs were quite straight out, and put his left hand round behind his head and grasped his right ear with it. I tried to do it on my bedroom floor, but I couldn't get near to it.
Tell us about that later, Georgie. What happened next?
Well, Daisy sat down too and put her legs straight out in front of her, like the Guru, and tried to hold the toe of her shoe in her fingers, and naturally she couldn't get within yards of it. I got nearer than she did, and he said, "Beloved lady, not too far at first."
You could hear quite distinctly.
Naturally, for my window was open. And then he told her to stop up one nostril with her finger and inhale through the other, and then hold her breath while he counted 6. Then she breathed out again and said, "It is quite wonderful. I feel so light and vigorous."
It would be very wonderful indeed if dear Daisy felt light. And what next?
Then they sat and swayed backwards and forwards again, and muttered something that sounded like pom.
That would be om. And then?
Well, I couldn't wait any longer, for I had some letters to write.
Georgie, we'll give you a lunch to reward you for your report. It has all been most interesting. Don't you agree, Peppino?
Oh, indeed.
I wonder if there's something in it. But even if there is, I doubt if poor dear Daisy will be able to handle it. You remember the hash she made of her Christian Science?
And her uric acid diet.
Which ended in anemia. Yes. After lunch, I will scribble a note to her. If you would be so kind as to deliver it for me this afternoon, Georgie?
Delighted. And it'll give me a chance to see if I can discover a little more.
Among her letters, Lucia finds one from Daisy, boasting, there's no other word for it, about her acquisition of a guru. And this colours the tone of the note with which Georgie later arrives at the Quantock's house. He discovers Daisy in her garden, standing in the middle of the lawn on one leg, and looking like a little round fat stork, whose legs have not grown, but who has preserved the habits of her kind.
Dear lady, I brought a note for you from Lucia.
Thank you, my dear Georgie. It's extraordinary what yoga has done for me already. Cold, quite gone. If you ever feel out of sorts or depressed or cross, you can cure yourself at once. I've got a visitor staying with me.
Yes. Have you, indeed?
Yes. And as you've just come from dear Lucia's, perhaps she may have said something to you, for I wrote to her about him. Well, what does she say?
Here's her note.
Oh, just a postcard. Too wonderful. Pray bring him yourself to my little garden party on Friday. There will only be a few. Let me know if he wants a quiet room ready for him. Well, we'll see about that. I think my guru would probably prefer his quiet rooms here in my little house. He's a guru of extraordinary sanctity from Benares, and he is teaching me the way. You shall see him, Georgie, unless he is meditating. I have given him the guest bedroom and Robert's dressing room to meditate in. Guru! If he's meditating, he won't hear me, so we shan't be interrupting him. He wouldn't hear a railway accident if he was meditating. Guru, dear.
Beloved lady.
Guru, dear, I want to introduce a friend of mine to you. This is Mr. Pillson, and when you know him a little better, you will call him Georgie.
Beloved lady, I know him very well indeed.
Eh?
I see into his clear, white soul. Peace be unto you, my friend.
Isn't he marvellous fancy? Say something to him.
How do you do?
I am always well. I am always young and well because I follow the way.
60 at least, he tells me, and he thinks more. But the years make no difference to him. He is like a boy. Call him Guru.
Guru?
Yes, my friend.
I'm very glad you are well.
Guru, dear, are you coming down to see us?
Beloved lady, no. It is laid on me to wait here.
Oh.
It is the time of calm and prayer, when it is good to be alone. I will come down when the guides bid me. But teach our dear friend what I have taught you. Surely before long I will grasp his earthly hand. But not now. Peace, peace and light.
Have you got some guides as well? And are they Indians too?
No. Those are his spiritual guides. He sees them and talks to them, but they are not in the body. I have never felt anything like it. He has brought such an atmosphere into the house that even Robert feels it and doesn't mind being turned out of his dressing room. Oh, isn't it all marvellous? Come inside and I'll tell you all about it.
Yes, do tell me. What does the guru actually do?
Oh, my dear, it is not what he does, but what he is. Trances and meditations all day. And in the intervals, such serenity and sweetness. You know, for instance, how tiresome Robert is about his food. Well, last night the mutton, I'm bound to say, was a little underdone, and Robert was beginning to throw it about the plate in the way he has. And...
oh, yes, I can remember him doing that at one of my parties.
Well, my guru got up and just said, "Show me way to kitchen." He leaves out little words sometimes because they don't matter. So I took him there, and in 10 minutes he was up again with a little plate of curry and rice and what had been underdone mutton, and you never tasted anything so good. Robert had most of it, gobbled it up. And I had the rest, and my guru was so pleased at seeing Robert pleased. I shouldn't a bit wonder if Robert began breathing exercises soon. There is one that makes you young and lean and strengthens the liver.
Oh, can you teach me that? No, not that I'm getting at all plump, of course, but you never know. And as for my liver, I always have to be careful, and I have noticed that I'm sometimes a little pale after a party.
No, you cannot practice it, except under tuition from an expert.
But couldn't he be my guru as well?
And quite suddenly, as if urged by some demon, a desire that has been only intermittently in Mrs. Quantock's consciousness takes full possession of her. A red revolutionary insurgence hoists its banners. Why, with this stupendous novelty in the shape of a guru, shouldn't she lead and direct Riseholme instead of Lucia?
I've always wondered why darling Lucia should be Queen of Riseholme. After all, everybody knows her old tunes by now. We all know she only ever plays the first movement of the Moonlight Sonata because the other two go so much faster. And I'm sure she doesn't read 1/4 of the books she talks about. Just gets up bits from the encyclopedia. And as for her acting, we were all there when she completely forgot her words as Lady Macbeth in the middle of her sleepwalking scene. And now she wants to steal my guru and launch him as one of her stunts. Then she'll be the one who'll give arm parties and breathing parties and standing on one leg parties, while I shall be just a humble guest. Oh, it is not to be borne.
She steels herself with the memory of the triumph she once scored in the matter of the Scotch attorney.
Dear Georgie, no one would be more delighted than I if my guru consented to take you as a pupil, but you can't tell what he will do. As he said to me today, apropos of myself, I cannot come unless I be sent. Oh, was not that wonderful? He knew at once he had been sent to me.
But he called me his friend. He told me I had a clear white soul.
Oh, yes, but that is his attitude towards everybody. His religion makes it impossible for him to think ill of anybody.
But he didn't tell Rush he had a white soul when he asked him for some brandy and had it put down to you.
Well, naturally, he cannot go about saying that sort of thing to everyone. Common people would not understand him. He is of the highest caste.
Oh, please ask him to teach me.
Well, I will ask my guru whether he will take you as a pupil, but I cannot answer for what he will say.
What does he charge for his lessons?
Oh, the word money never passes his lips. I don't think he really knows what it means. He proposed to sit on the village green with a beggar's bowl. Oh, but of course I could not permit that. For the present, I just give him all he wants. No doubt when he goes away, which I hope will not be for many weeks yet, I shall slip something suitably generous into his hand. But I don't think about that. Well, goodbye, dear Georgie.
Huh?
Tell Lucia I shall answer her postcard in the morning after I have had a word with Guru. Peace.
Oh, goodbye.
Om.
Pillson gone?
Yes, Robert, why?
What did he want? Advice on his embroidery?
Oh, no, Robert, this is serious. He brought a note from Lucia asking me, begging me to take Guru to her garden party on Friday. But I can read her like an open book. She wants to take Guru over. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been so enthusiastic. What shall we do?
I shouldn't say a word to him about it if I were you. After all, we are looking after him rather well. And it was something else I wanted to have a word about. What's going to happen?
Well, no one knows. Even the guides can't tell where and when a guru may be called.
And you propose he should stop here till he's called somewhere else?
I don't propose anything. It's not in my hands.
He's a first-rate cook, anyhow. Can't you engage him as that? Call to the kitchen, you know.
Darling.
Well, ask him. As you say, you can never tell where a guru may be called. Give him £40 a year in beer money.
Beer?
Yes, dear, I said beer. And in any case, I insist that you dismiss your present cook. You only took her because she was a Christian Scientist, and you've left that little sheepfold now. But that mutton curry last night, and that other thing, that's what I mean by good eating. Talk to him about it tomorrow. I wonder if he can make a good bisque soup.
Oh, dear, oh, dear. Robert is quite right about Lucia. I shan't say a thing to my guru about her garden party. Just ignore the whole thing. What nerve! No peace. Now, I must make a note. 1. Shall I keep Guru entirely to myself? 2. Shall I run him for all he is worth and leave out Lucia? 3. Shall I get Georgie on my side? 4. Shall I give L and G bits? 5. Shall I ask him to be my cook? Oh dear.
The hours between breakfast and luncheon are those which the inhabitants of Riseholme chiefly devote to spying on each other. They go about from shop to shop, occasionally making purchases, or to church on Sundays, but the real object of these excursions is to see what everybody else is doing and learn what fresh interests have sprung up, like mushrooms during the night. So the following morning, when Georgie, his smart military cape over his arm, is walking briskly back from church, he hears his name called in the familiar alto.
Giorgino! Giorgino mio! Buongiorno, Gino!
And there is Lucia in her garden, having put away her prayer book and her usual church face until next week.
Come and have equal talk.
What do you want? Tell Georgie. What you got in his mind?
Here's pretty flower for buttonhole. Now, tell me about brown man. Why Mrs. Quantock says she think he no come to poor Lucia's party garden.
Did she?
Yes. What does that mean? Is it possible that she wants to keep him to herself? She has done that sort of thing before, you know. There is the guru, taking a little walk. Now we will see. Salam!
Good day.
I thought I really should introduce myself, your being such a close associate of my dear friend Mrs. Quantock.
Mrs. Quantock, a beloved lady, a white soul.
Yes, I'm sure. Well, I am Mrs. Lucas.
Oh, Mrs. Lucas. Everyone is speaking to me of Mrs. Lucas.
Yes, I do seem to be known. Do come into the garden, won't you? I want to introduce to you, Guru, a great friend of mine.
Beloved lady, so kind.
This is Mr. Pillson, Guru. Guru, Mr. Pillson.
Delighted. We met before in a sort of way, didn't we?
Yes, indeed. So pleased.
Dear Guru, I should so like my husband to meet you. Mr. Pillson is lunching here. Could I possibly persuade you to take tiffin, is it, with us?
I should be delighted, dear lady.
Then let us go in. Peppino will be thrilled, I'm sure.
So you're enjoying your visit to Mrs. Quantock, Guru?
Such a kind lady, and she will get on well. But she will find some of the postures difficult, for she is what you call globe.
Oh, yes. What was that postures when I saw her standing on one leg in the garden, and when she sat down and tried to hold her toes?
Yes, indeed. Quite so. And difficult for globe.
Yes, I expect it is. Such a pity, Guru, that you cannot come to my little garden party on Friday. I was hoping to have a word with you about Mr. Lucas and Mr. Pillson, and myself, of course, benefiting from your tuition. And discussing your fees, of course.
Garden party, dear lady? Fees? But I know nothing of garden party.
Oh, no doubt dear Mrs. Quantock forgot to tell you. Ah, here is my husband, Peppino. This is Guru. You've heard so much about him.
Oh, indeed.
Do remind me to telephone dear Daisy before we sit down to tiffin.
Certainly, Cara. Luncheon is ready. You will stay to tiffin, won't you, Guru?
Ah, so kind. I see many white souls here. It is happy place when there are white souls, for to those I am sent.
Oh, that makes it so much easier for me to ask about our becoming your chelas, is it? So understanding of you to say that it was for us, white souls, that you were sent. May we hope?
It would give me deep pleasure. It would give guides deep pleasure. And perhaps after tiffin we might meditate together.
Oh, yes.
When Lucia finds anybody out in some act of defiance, she never indulges in idle threats of revenge. It is sufficient that she knows and will take suitable steps on the earliest occasion. So it is in her sweetest voice that she telephones the perfidious Mrs. Quantock.
Daisy, dear, Lucia here. There has just been the happiest accident. I met the Guru quite by chance, and we both felt instantly that there was some bond of sympathy between us, and so he consented to come back with me to meet Peppino. And Georgie was here too, and we're all just sitting down to tiffin. No, Daisy dear, tiffin. That is Indian for luncheon. Guru was so thrilled to have someone speak his own language to him. And after tiffin, we are all going to meditate together.
One foot on one thigh, other foot on other thigh, and the head and back straight. It is good to meditate so.
Shall I be able to do that? And what will be the effect?
You will be light and active, dear lady.
Mrs. Quantock, ma'am.
Ah, Daisy, dear.
Guru, dear, you naughty thing. Why did you not tell Shayla you would not be home for tiffin?
But see, beloved lady, how pleasant we all are. Take not too much thought when it is only white souls who are together.
Some white souls perhaps are not as white as others.
Dear Daisy, we're making such lovely plans. The Guru is going to teach us all classes, aren't you?
I seem to feel call. I leave all to you. I will walk a little way off in the garden and meditate, and then when you have arranged, you will tell Guru, who is your servant. Om Shanti, Om Shanti.
Om, dear Guru. Well now, should I take the lead? Perhaps I should, as we're in my house. Well, as our dear Guru has so wonderfully offered to be our teacher, I do feel that Peppino and I should make the sacrifice and offer a room here at the Hurst as the most convenient place to hold our classes.
Yes, indeed, Lucia.
I don't see why.
And now, where shall the Guru stay? It would be too bad, Daisy, if we are all to profit by his classes, that you should have all the trouble and expense of entertaining him, for in your sweet little house he must be a great inconvenience, and I think you said that your husband had given up his dressing room to him.
No inconvenience at all, quite the contrary, in fact, dear. And Robert regards him as a most desirable inmate.
You and your husband are too unselfish. Often have I said, Daisy and dear Mr. Robert are the most unselfish people I know. Haven't I, Georgino?
Oh, yes, yes. It would be simply trespassing on Mrs. Quantock's good nature if she is to board and lodge the Guru while he teaches all of us.
He shall come here. There are 2 of my guest rooms, Hamlet and Othello, vacant, and it will not be in the least inconvenient. I shall really like having him here. Shall we consider that settled then?
Lucia, it might
Dear me, I shall be busy this August.
Perhaps, darling Lucia, It would be as well to ask my guru if he has anything to say to all this. England is a free country still, even if you happen to have come from India.
What a good idea. Then you would like me to go and tell him what we propose. Just as you like. Don't think of stirring, dear Daisy. I know how you feel the heat. Sit quiet in here. As you know, I am a real salamander. The sun is never troppo caldo for me. Oh! It is all too wonderful. The guides have told him that they are settling everything for him in wisdom and love. How lovely to think that we have been guided by them. Dear Daisy, how wonderful it is. I will send across for his things, shall I?
Things? He hasn't got a thing in the world. Every possession chains us down to earth, darling Lucia. You have to understand that.
Beloved lady, all is peace and happiness. The guides have spoken to me so lovingly of you, and they say, it is best your guru should come here.
Oh.
There is more need of me here, for already you have so much light.
Oh. Do they say I have much light already, Guru dear? Oh, that is nice of them. And of course, the rest of you have so much to learn still.
And now I shall go back to your house and leave sweet thoughts there for you. And shall I send sweet thoughts to the house of the kind gentleman next door?
Oh, yes, please. Isn't that nice of him?
I'll show you out.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I must be going.
Guru,
Yes, dear lady.
there will be somebody at my garden party on Friday, Guru, who will, I'm sure, be most anxious to meet you.
That will be indeed delightful, and no otherwise so.
Oh, I'm sure she is. Lady Ambermere, such a dear friend. Her husband was governor of Madras, and she spent many years in India.
Madras? There are many dark spirits in Madras. And this lady, she was at English Residency?
Yes. You and she will have so much to talk about.
It will be a great treat. I must go and tell the guides this happy news.
Om, Guru, Om. Oh, what a triumph.
And in a flash, Lucia sees herself as the Guru's high priestess, the dispenser of his mysteries, taking classes herself when her Guru is too deep in meditation.
And I shall wear a teaching robe, something becoming but spiritual, in white linen, long with full flowing sleeves, rather like a surplice, and a hood lined with satin, and pearl buttons, and a silver girdle with tassels. Oh, yes.
In The Guru, Part 1 of Queen Lucia by E F Benson, the narrator was Aubrey Woods. Lucia was played by Barbara Jefford, Georgie by Jonathan Cecil, Daisy Quantock, Jane Wenham, and the Guru, Badi Uzama. Peppino was David Garth, Colonel Boucher, Bernard Brown, Robert Quantock, Anthony Newlands, Grosvenor, Narissa Knights, and the porter and ticket collector, Michael Janner and Mark Straker. The pianist was John Owen Edwards, and the director, John Cardy. Queen Lucia, a 5-part comedy series based on the novel by E F Benson, dramatised and narrated by Aubrey Woods, with Barbara Jefford as Lucia, Jonathan Cecil as Georgie Pillson, Jane Wenham as Daisy Quantock, and Fabia Drake as Lady Ambermere. Part 2, Some Arrivals and a Precipitant Departure.
And you will be delivering the marquee and the small tent on Wednesday at 2:30? I can rely on you then. Good. Grosvenor, the front door.
And having thus completed the preliminary arrangements for her forthcoming garden party on Friday, Mrs. Emmeline Lucas, the acknowledged though not wholly undisputed Queen of Riseholme, who is known to her more intimate subjects as Lucia, walks briskly from the telephone room into the panelled entrance hall of her beautifully preserved Elizabethan house. Through the leaded lattice windows of glass so antique that it is practically impossible to see out of them, Lucia's sharp, dark eyes perceive the wavy outline of her visitor, and Grosvenor opens the door to admit, simultaneously, the bright sunshine of this summer morning in 1920, and Lucia's gentleman-in-waiting and faithful aide-de-camp, Georgie Pillson.
Buongiorno, Giorgino. Such an early boy. Come in.
Thank you.
Poor Lucia, still getting smoky room ready for first guru lesson. Such a wash. And my garden party is on Friday.
You are wonderful. How do you find time for everything?
My dear, it is only busy people who find time for everything. I've ordered a small tent, which will be next to the refreshment marquee, and will have my oriental rug from Peppino's dressing room for my guru to sit upon, and just 1 or 2 chairs for any of my more special guests to sit and meditate with him. It was his own idea. So noble, so giving. Oh, it is all being so wonderful. There seems a new atmosphere about the house since my guru came. Something holy and peaceful. Do you not notice it?
Oh, yes. I think so. What is the guru doing now?
Meditating and preparing for our class. I do hope dear Daisy will not bring in discordant elements or try to insinuate that I have in any way filched Guru from her.
Oh, but that's not likely, is it? I thought he said she had so much light.
Yes, he did. But now he's a little troubled about her, I think. She did not want him to go away from her house, and she sent over here for some silk pyjamas belonging to her husband, which the Guru thought she had given him. Apparently, Mr. Quantock didn't think so at all. Ah, that will be Daisy, the last of the Cellas. You'll find the word in Kipling. It means disciple.
Yes, I know. I told you that.
Oh, by the way, there's a parcel come, which I think must be the Mozart piano duet. Grosvenor, the door again. Will you stay on after the class and read it with me?
I'm afraid I can't do that. My sisters are arriving on the 12:26.
Oh.
But I could come back this afternoon once they've settled in.
Do that, then.
Thank you, Grosvenor.
Dearest Daisy, do come. My guru is ready for us, I think.
And all breathe out. And that is end of lesson. Peace.
Oh, I feel such a difference already. I feel as if I could never be hasty or worried any more at all. Don't you experience that, dear Daisy?
Yes, dear. I went through all that at my first lesson, didn't I, Guru dear?
That's true, dear Mrs. Quantock.
I feel like a feather.
I feel positively giddy. Am I to do that swaying exercise before every meeting?
Si, Peppino, si. 5 times to the right and 5 times to the left and then 5 times backwards and forwards. Oh, I felt so young and weightless just now when we did it that I thought I was rising into the air. Didn't you, Daisy?
No, dear. That is levitation and comes a very long way on. Will you tell them about that time when you levitated at Marble Arch, dear Guru? Or will you keep that for when Mrs. Lucas gets rather further on? You must be patient, dear Lucia. We all have to go through the early stages before we get to that.
Yes, dear. We will tread those early stages together and encourage each other.
We will all encourage each other.
Well, thank you very much, Guru. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go and meet my sisters. Such a light feeling. I shall positively run to the railway station.
But there is no need of that. Georgie always leaves plenty of time when he has any sort of appointment. He hates to be rushed, and besides, hurrying might agitate his smooth chestnut locks, which are parted low on one side of his head, grown long, and swept carefully across a bald top, rather like a river flowing over a bare bed. It is just as well he has left time, however, for as he draws level with the Ambermere arms, who should appear, walking stiffly with her nose in the air as if suspecting but not choosing to verify some faint unpleasant odour, but Lady Ambermere herself. She always treats Georgie like a boy, which he likes.
Ah, Mr. Georgie. I don't know where my people are. Have you seen my motor?
Yes, dear lady, it's across the road at your own arms, happy motor, with your chauffeur at the wheel.
Well, the happy motor, you little rascal, must come to my arms instead of being at them. Fancy being able to see my chauffeur at that distance. Oh, young eyes.
Oh.
If Lady Ambermere unbends to anybody, she unbends to Georgie. She considers him of quite good family because his mother was a Bartlett and a second cousin of her ladyship's deceased husband. Sometimes when she talks to Georgie, she says, "we," implying thereby his connection with the aristocracy. This gratifies Georgie nearly as much as the implication that he is still very young.
Shall I run across and fetch your motor for you?
Whistle on your fingers like a vulgar street boy. I'm sure you know how to.
I say. Here goes then.
No, don't do anything of the kind.
Of course not.
In a minute you shall walk with me across to the arms. But tell me this first. I have just called on our good Mrs. Lucas to say that very likely I will look in at her garden party on Friday if I have nothing else to do. But who is this wonderful creature she is expecting? Is he an Indian conjurer? If so, I should like to see him. Although, when Ambermere was in Madras, I remember one coming to the residency who had cobras and that sort of thing. I told Mrs. Lucas I didn't like snakes, and she said there shouldn't be any.
Oh, I've met him, dear lady, and I'm sure there's no question of reptiles. He's a Brahmin of extraordinary sanctity and the very highest caste. He talks a lot about peace and light, and seems to have some guides with him, but no snakes, I feel sure. He said I had a clear white soul.
How splendid. Well, some of these Brahmins are a very decent family. I was always against lumping all dark-skinned people together and calling them niggers. When we were at Madras, I was famed for my discrimination. I came into Riseholme today to get rooms at the Arms for Olga Braceley.
Olga Braceley? The prima donna?
Yes, she is coming to stay at the Arms for a few nights with Mr. Shuttleworth.
I see.
No, it is all right. He is her husband.
Ah!
They were married last week. I should have thought she'd call herself Mrs. Shuttleworth now. It's a good enough name. The Shuttleworths are distantly related to my family. But she prefers to go on calling herself Miss Braceley. Of course, I don't dispute her right to call herself what she pleases, far from it. Though who the Braceleys were, I have never been able to discover. Now, you may escort me across the road.
Do be careful of the motors.
Nonsense, they must drive round us. The Shuttleworths are staying at the Arms for a few days, as I said, and will dine with me tomorrow. I have a few people staying, and no doubt Miss Braceley will sing afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
My Broadwood was always considered a remarkably fine instrument. Ah, here is the motor. A call on the Shuttleworths, Georgie. Say I told you to.
Ah.
Home.
As Georgie hurries on up the high street, he feels very much like a dog with a bone, who only wants to get away from all the other dogs and chew on it quietly. Well he remembers Olga Braceley's marvellous performance last year at Covent Garden in the part of Brunhilde. He had gone to town for a drastic but rejuvenating visit to his dentist, and the tiresomeness of all that had been quite forgotten when he saw Olga awake to Siegfried's kiss on the mountain top. He felt for a moment, and feels again now, that he took quite the wrong turn when he settled to spend his life with his embroidery and his china dusting.
I ought to have been Siegfried. I wonder what would happen if I asked Olga Bracely to luncheon without telling Lucia anything about it. I wonder if I dare. Oh, how tiresome. There's the train coming now.
And he has perforce to put such Bolshevik thoughts from his mind. For the moment.
Oh dear. Where can they be? Nobody getting off at all. Except Mrs. Weston's cook, and all the world knows she's only been to Brinton to buy fish. It is Monday, isn't it? Yes. Oh, what a lot of luggage. Can't all be Mrs. Weston's fish.
Mr. Pillson, sir?
Yes, Porter?
This note for you, sir.
Oh.
Handed to the guard by two young ladies who left all that luggage in his van. I've called for a cab, Mr. Pillson.
Oh, thank you, Porter.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Pillson, sir.
What can have gone on? Oh, dear, Tarsima. Dearest Georgie, it was such a lovely day that when we got to
Paddington, Ursy and I decided to bicycle down instead for a lark. So we sent our things on, and we may arrive tonight, but probably tomorrow. Take care of Tiptree.
Tiptree? Oh, dear me.
And give him plenty of jam. He loves it. Yours, Hermy. P.S. Tipsy Poozle doesn't really bite. It's only his fun.
Oh, how tiresome. Is this animal for me, Porter?
That's the one, sir. Irish Terrier, isn't it?
Yes, I think it is. Good little doggy. Where is whose lead, then? Look, come to Uncle Georgie, then, like a good, tipsy-poozy. Down! Oh, dear. I wonder what Guru would do. Porter.
Yes, Mr. Pillson?
Call me another cab, would you? I think, little doggy would prefer to travel on his own. I know I would.
Yes, sir.
Perhaps Foljambe will be able to do something with him. Now, what is it I have to remember? Ah, yes. Lucia after luncheon. The Mozart duet. Yes. Oh, what a day. Rather a tiresome afternoon with Mrs. Lucas, too.
Oh, was it, sir?
We practiced that piece 20 times.
Oh, did you, sir?
Yes, at least. Hardly fair on me, or on Mozart, for that matter.
Sir.
Oh, dear. I say, Foljambe, you were brave seeing to Tiptree like that. Did you have to give him a lot of jam to pacify him?
Not at all, sir. He was just a bit snappy at first. Being tied to that bag of golf clubs all day, I shouldn't wonder. He's settled down nicely in the woodshed now, quiet as a lamb. Anything else you want, sir?
No, thank you, Foljambe. I'll be getting to bed, too. Oh, what an exhausting day.
Georgie awakes with a start some hours later, wondering what has disturbed him. For quite distinctly, he hears a muffled sound in the room below, which he instantly diagnoses with fatal certainty as...
burglars! Oh, dear! I wish Hermy and Ursy were here. There's so much more... or even Tiptree. Oh, why didn't I have him sleep in here? I could easily have had my blue quilt cleaned. But there he is in the woodshed, useless. Me! My bibelots, that's what they're after. The Fabergé cigarette case, the Louis XVI snuff box, the Queen Anne toy porringer. How dare they? Now I must be brave. Out of bed. There. Now get the poker from the fireplace and surprise them. Oh, that dratted chair. Now, where is the silly thing? Shh! Got it. Now, then. There's a light in the drawing room. Oh, my bibelots! Oh, no! There are two of them. I'm outnumbered. My champagne, the brutes. They shan't get away with it. Oh, why didn't I have bells put on my shutters like Mrs. Weston? Now then, courage.
Door handle. There. Poker. Right. If you move, I shall fire. Hermy! Ursy! Oh, dash it all!
Lord, what a laugh! Georgie, it's the most ripping laugh!
Fire if we move. Both the fire, was it?
Ask another. There. He thought we were burglars and came down with a poker. Brave boy. It's positive there's a limit. Have a drink, Georgie. Ursy! His hair!
Oh, no! Oh, frightful! No! Oh, my dears! Look, thinking you were burglars, I just didn't have time to brush it across. Brush it back. Brush it at all. Oh, dear, dear, dear. Oh, dear.
Never mind, Georgie, old dear. Your secret is safe with us. Keep it under our hats, eh?
Oh, dear. My dears, what fun. Look, let's all have supper, and I'll get another bottle of wine, and we'll get some jam for Tipsy, too. Naughty girls. Back again presently.
Once out of the room, Georgie dashes back upstairs to his bedroom and puts his hair in order, covering his bald pate with the tresses that have been hanging like those of a Rhine maiden over one shoulder. He then puts on a very smart dressing gown, descends to the wine cellar, and armed with a bottle of Veuve Clicquot, rejoins the ladies.
Well, it's 100 miles if it's a yard. And then it was so late when we got here that we thought we wouldn't disturb you, especially as the drawing-room window wasn't bolted.
Bicycles outside. They'll just have to be out at grass till morning. Oh, Tipsy Ipsy Boozy Woozy, how is you? Hope he behaved like the good little Tiptree that he is, Georgie.
Oh, yes, we made great friends. He was a wee bit upset at the station, but then he had a good tea with his Uncle Georgie and played hide-and-seek, didn't he?
Fool dog! You really shouldn't make faces at him, Georgie. It doesn't amuse him. But if he shows his teeth, always hit him. Pass a fizz.
Jolly plucky of you, Georgie, to come down and beard us.
Real sport. And how's old Foldy Ray? Why didn't she come down and fight us too?
Well, if you mean Foljambe, it was because I didn't think it worthwhile to disturb her.
My word, Georgie. You're becoming a regular Galahad.
Why don't you come with us tomorrow morning to the golf course and make up a three-ball?
No, I'd love to, Ursy, but I'm afraid I have to attend my yoga lesson at 10 o'clock.
Yoga? When? Why?
At Mrs. Lucas's, at the Hurst. We have a guru and take meditation classes every day. We do exercises and say Om, which means peace, I think.
You're a dark horse, isn't he, Hermy? Who'd have thought a brother of ours would turn out to be a mystic? What's this guru like?
He's a Brahmin, very high caste and of extraordinary sanctity, from Benares. He's staying with Mrs. Lucas, that's why he holds his classes there.
Why not come and join us after your meditations?
Well then, I'm afraid I have to visit a friend.
What sort of a friend, Georgie?
A very lovely lady.
Oh, not Lucia.
No, not Lucia.
Ursy? He's mashing!
Well, just a little, perhaps.
Georgie is not sorry to have the following morning to himself, for he wants to have another little quiet practice at the Mozart duet on his own. He is about to remove the strip of flannel from his piano keys when he sees a motor draw up at the Ambermere Arms. The carriage door is held open, and a woman gets out. Tall and statuesque, she stands there unwinding her motor veil. Then she turns round, and with a thump of his heart that surprises Georgie with its violence, he beholds the well-remembered features of his Brunhilde. He races up to his bedroom and arrays himself in a fresh, almost pearly suit of white duck, a mauve tie with an amethyst pin, socks tightly braced up, of precisely the same colour as the tie, so that an imaginative beholder might have conjectured that on this warm day the end of his tie had melted and run down his legs, and buckskin shoes with tall, slim heels. A straw hat completes this pretty ensemble, and Georgie trips, as eager as Hermes, if not quite as swift, across to the Ambermere Arms, where he presents his card and is presently led through into the garden behind the building.
How kind of you to come and see me, Mr. Pillson.
Oh.
I'm sorry my husband isn't here. He's been delayed on business and won't be arriving till this afternoon. I do so want you to meet him.
That would be lovely.
And so Lady Ambermere asked you to come and see us? I think that was much kinder of her than asking us to dinner. I hate going out to dinner in the country almost as much as I hate not going out to dinner in town. Besides, with that great hook nose of hers, I'm always afraid in an absent moment I might scratch her on the head and say, "Pretty Polly!" Is she a great friend of yours? I hope so, because everyone likes his best friends being laughed at. Suppose we can't go. I could just send a telegram saying that we've just remembered a prior engagement, and then you can show us around this utterly adorable place and dine with us afterwards. Oh, that would be so much nicer.
And so much nicer for me, too.
How sweet of you to say so. Oh, do tell me something. I found a note when I arrived half an hour ago from a Mrs. Lucas, asking me and Mr. Riseholme to go to a garden party on Friday. She said that she didn't even hope that I should remember her, but would we come? Really, I don't think she can remember me very well if she thinks I'm Mrs. Riseholme. She'll have my husband thinking I've been married before and that I've caused him to commit bigamy. That's a pleasant conversation for a honeymoon, isn't it? Who is she?
Well, she's quite an old friend of mine. I never knew she'd met you before. Hasn't she been quick with her invitation? She must have sent it the moment she heard you were here, which is probably why she got your name wrong. Oh, I'm devoted to her.
Extremely proper. But now tell me this, and look straight in my face so that I shall know if you're speaking the truth. Should I enjoy myself more wandering about this heavenly place than at her garden party? Go on, eyes front.
I've got a suggestion. Will you both come to luncheon with me first on Friday, and we'll stroll about, and then you can go to the garden party, and if you don't like it, I'll take you away again.
Done. Oh, how I should like never to see the inside of an opera house again. Why mayn't I grow on the walls of a garden like this? Or better still, why shouldn't I have a house and a garden of my own here? And sing on the village green and ask for halfpence.
You would be a millionaire within a week.
Oh, what a lovely thing to say. Thank you, Mr. Pillson.
Oh, I'd better be off while you still think well of me. 1:30 on Friday, shall we say?
Excellent. But where do you live?
Just across the green. Shall I call for you?
Certainly not. Why should you have that bother? Let me come with you to the door, and perhaps you'll show me from there.
She passes through the hall with him, and they stand together in the sight of all Riseholme that is strolling about the green at this as at most other hours. Instantly, all faces turn in their direction, like so many sunflowers following the sun, while Georgie points out his particular mulberry tree. When everybody has had a good look, he raises his hat.
Venerdì, allora. So many thanks.
And quite distinctly, she kisses her hand to him as he turns away.
Oh, and she talks Italian, too. Venerdì. Yes. Yes, that means Friday. Ah, yes. Luncheon.
Georgie, on his evening stroll, passes the hearse just before dinner. No hint of Mozart. Instead, there comes out of the open windows the most amazing hash of sound, which he can just recognize as being the piano arrangement of the duet between Brunhilde and Siegfried in the last act. And he would be dull indeed if he did not instantly guess what that signified. News of Olga Braceley's arrival must have travelled with the speed of a forest fire. Then quite suddenly, the babel ceases, and through the open window he glimpses the burnoosed figure of the guru entering Lucia's music room.
Ah, Guru dear,
How you startled me.
Gracious lady, I came to tell you that there are wonderful vibrations today. I feel that some word is on way from the guides. Some great message of light.
How interesting, Guru. Oh, the arrangements for your special tent on Friday have all been attended to. Probably the first person I shall bring in there will be Lady Ambermere, for she is noted for her punctuality.
Lady Ambermere? Ah, yes, your gracious friend whose husband was governor of Madras. That will be a great treat.
Oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if the guides decided to delay their great message for a day or two? It would be so impressive if it came to you in the middle of my garden party.
Gracious lady, the great word comes not so. It comes always in solitude and quiet.
Ah, yes, I know how true that is. Dear Guru, do rest until dinner.
It is possible message will not have come from guides so soon. Perhaps I shall have to remain in room until night.
Well, if you do not come down to dinner, dear Guru, Grosvenor shall take a tray up.
Just to leave outside door.
Yes, indeed. I understand. And then, if you wish, you shall not be disturbed until our lesson tomorrow morning.
Oh, thank you, gracious lady. I go to seek guidance. Om Shanti, Om Shanti.
And he flees with the heels of his slippers tapping on the oak stairs up to Othello. Softly he shuts out the dark spirits of Madras, makes himself even more secure by turning the key in his door, and considers his position. The following evening, Georgie is sitting in his drawing-room for the half-hour before dressing time, pondering the luncheon menu he will offer Olga Bracely and her husband on Friday, and wondering what outfit he should wear on that thrilling occasion, when the quiet of the moment is suddenly and violently disturbed.
Georgie, you'll never guess.
We recognised him at once.
What?
He recognised us too. And didn't he run?
Into the hearse and shut the door.
My dears, you needn't howl so. All Riseholme will hear you. Look, tell me, without shouting, who it was you thought you recognised.
The Guru. The
Of high caste and extraordinary sanctity.
The Brahmin from Benares.
The great teacher.
Who do you think he is?
What are you talking about?
He's a cook from the Calcutta restaurant in Bedford Street.
Where we often have lunch. He makes the most delicious curries.
What?
Especially when he's a little tipsy.
And is about as much a guru as Tipsy Poozy.
And always said he came from Madras.
No.
And to think of Mr. and Mrs. Lucas and you and Mrs. Quantock all sitting around a curry cook and drinking in his wisdom.
Oh, I heard that Mr. Quantock wanted to engage him for the kitchen.
He was a jolly sight nearer the mark than the rest of you.
We're off to call on the Lucases after dinner, just to see their faces when we tell them that his curries are even better than his omelette.
Oh, I'd much rather you didn't, my dears.
Oh, but we want to, Georgie.
Oh, don't deny us a bit of fun.
It's a quarter of an hour to dressing time for dinner, sir. Ladies.
Thank you.
Foljambe.
Well, we'll talk about it at dinner time, and I'll just go down to the cellar first and see if I can find something you like.
Good old Georgie. But if you're going to bribe us, you must bribe us well.
We'll see. 2 bottles, perhaps.
The evening goes off with a success more brilliant than Georgie has anticipated, and it is quite unnecessary to open the second bottle of Veuve Clicquot. His sisters are to be off the following morning for a golf tournament, and once the banging of luggage and the crash of golf clubs as they make ready for their departure has subsided, Georgie sleeps soundly. He awakes once, with the sense that some noise has aroused him, but Hermy and Ursy evidently respect his legitimate desire for quiet, and the noise is extremely stealthy and subdued, as if shod with slippers. Georgie thinks of his absurd alarm about burglars on the night of their arrival, and smiles at the notion. The yoga class next morning is to assemble at 10, but just as it is time to start for the Hurst, he remembers that he has left his cigarette case, the pretty straw one with the little turquoise in the corner, in the drawing room, and he goes to find it. The window is open, so apparently Foljambe has come in to let fresh air into the atmosphere which Hermy and Ursy so persistently contaminated last night with their fags. But his cigarette case is not on the table where he thought he left it. He looks round, and then stands rooted. His glass case of treasures is not only open, but empty. He gives a little low wailing cry, but does not tear his hair, for obvious reasons.
Foljambe! Foljambe! Foljambe!
Yes, sir? What is it?
Burglars! Real ones! Oh, my bibelots! See what that is?
Yes, sir.
Oh, my snuff box, my miniatures, my cigarette case, my bow china. Where have you gone?
Mrs. Lucas wants you to go round to her at once, sir.
Well, I can't. I must stop here and send for the police. Nothing must be moved.
Yes, sir.
Thank heaven. They've left my Queen Anne toy porringer. I wonder why they didn't want it.
I see. Mrs. Lucas would be very much obliged if you would come at once. There's been a robbery in her house, too.
Well, tell her there's been one at mine.
Very good, sir.
Oh, no, don't. No, just a minute. I'd better go and see what Lucia wants. Wait here, Foljambe, on this very spot, and don't stir.
Very well, sir.
Now, see that nobody touches anything. I shall probably ring up the police from Mrs. Lucas's. Admit them when they arrive.
Yes, sir.
Lucia, are you there? Yes. I'll be with you in a moment.
Georgie, there you are at last.
Yes, I came as quickly as I could.
Someone broke into Philip's safe last night and took £100 in banknotes.
I put them there only yesterday.
And my Roman pearls.
I've been burgled too. My Louis says snuff box is worth more than that. And there's the piece of bow china, and the cigarette case, and the Karl Hoot miniature as well.
My dear, it's a gang. And I was feeling so peaceful and exalted. It will make a terrible atmosphere in the house. My guru will be profoundly affected. He has often told me how he cannot stop in a house where there have been wicked emotions at play. I must keep it from him. I cannot lose him. Oh, Georgie, you're nearest, would you?
Oh, all right, I'll go.
Georgie, what are you doing here?
Well, it's terrible. My snuff box.
Oh, never
and
mind.
My bone
Listen, Robert and I have been burgled. 4 silver spoons, thank God most of our things are plated, 8 silver forks, and a Georgian tankard. Oh, I could have spared all but the last.
We've all been burgled.
What?
Let us not discuss it now. Peace. Let us have our class first, for it is 10 already, and not let any thought of revenge or evil spoil that for us. If I sent for the police now, I could not concentrate. I will not tell my guru what has happened to any of us, but for poor Peppino's sake, I will ask him to give us a rather short lesson.
Oh, how thoughtful of you, my dear.
For myself, I feel completely calm. Om.
Oh, all right,
Let us repair to the smoking room. My guru is a little late.
Your guru is certainly late. Would it not be as well to see what has happened to your guru, dear? Have you seen your guru this morning?
No, dear. He always meditates before a class.
So do I, but I have meditated long enough.
Oh, I don't like to interrupt him, but time is getting on. I'll go and tap on his door. door is locked, and yet there's no key in it.
Did you look through the keyhole, Lucia?
I knocked, and there was no reply. I said, Master, we are waiting, and he didn't answer.
My sisters told me last night that he was the curry cook at the Calcutta restaurant. They recognised him, and they thought he recognised them. He comes from Madras, and there is no more a guru than Foljambe is.
What?
I knew it.
I'll get a poker and break down the door. I believe he's gone. I believe he's the burglar. Grosvenor, telephone for the police.
Curry cook, is he? Robert and I were right after all. I will you watch your guru was best fitted for dear Lucia. But then, of course, you always knew best. Stairs. For my part, I shall tell the police that the Indian that has been living with you has stolen my spoons and forks and my Georgian tankard. Guru indeed. Burglaroo, I call him.
Guru? Guru! Open up, Guru! If you're in there, that is. Guru! Aha! Yeah. See, empty.
His bed hasn't been slept in.
Look in the wardrobe.
Everything gone. All his robes. Everything.
The cupboard?
My brandy! There must be 14 or 15 bottles there. All empty. That accounts for the glazed look in his eyes, which you, dear Lucia, thought was concentration. I call it distillation.
Did he take it from your cellar?
No, of course not. He had a standing order from me to acquire any little things he might want from my tradesmen. I wish I had my bills sent in every week.
Yes, dear.
I saw him buy the first bottle. I remember telling you about it, Lucia. It was at Rush's.
Well, it's no use standing there carrying on post-mortems. I shall put the whole matter into the hands of the Chief Constable. He'll soon track him down, and he can do his postures in prison for the next 10 years.
But we don't know yet if it was he who committed all these burglaries.
Nonsense, Lucia.
Oh, my people
Peppino mio. And you, Georgie, and you, Daisy. I want you, before you do anything at all, to listen to me for 5 minutes. What sort of figure shall we all cut if we put the matter into the hands of the police? They will probably catch him. And it will all come out that we have been the dupes of a tipsy contriver of curries. We have been made fools of. But for my part, I simply couldn't bear that everybody should know I had been made a fool of. What's £100 compared to that? Or your bibelot, Georgie?
My Louis says snuff-box, which I inherited, was worth at least that without the other things.
And it was my £100, not yours, carissima.
I'll go halves with you. I'll give you a cheque for 50.
And who would like to go halves in my tankard? I want my tankard.
What do you propose, then, Lucia?
Peppino. Caro.
Well?
I want you and Georgie to propose. Daisy and me, 2 silly women. We want you and Georgie tell us what to do. But if Lucia must speak, I think...
Think? What do you think?
I think I should do something of this sort. I should let it be known that dear Daisy's guru had left us quite suddenly.
Oh, he is my guru now.
And that he had had a call somewhere else. His work here was done. He had established our classes and set all our feet upon the way. He always said that something of the sort might happen to him.
I believe he had it planned all along. He knew the thing couldn't last forever.
Yes, and when my sisters recognised him, he bolted.
With all the available property, he could lay hands on.
Now, about the burglaries. It won't do to let it be known that 3 burglaries were committed in one night and that simultaneously Daisy's guru was called away.
If he is my guru, why is he living in your house?
Such a combination of circumstances might give rise to suspicion. Now, with regard to our burglary, Peppino...
Yes, cara.
Let me think a moment. I have it. Only Grosvenor knows. And you must tell her, Carissimo, that you have found the £100.
But
that settles that. Now you, Georgie.
Foljambe knows.
Then tell her not to say a word about it. Well, put some more things out in your lovely treasure case. More heirlooms. No one will notice. And You, Daisy?
Robert is away.
And when he comes back, will he notice the loss of the tankard? Did you often use it?
Now and again.
Chance it, then. And that settles that. Now, with regard to our studies. I, for one, should be very sorry to drop them altogether because they made such a wonderful difference to me, and I think you all feel the same.
Well,
perhaps we shall find by and by that we can't progress much all by ourselves, and it'll all drop quietly. But don't let us drop it with a bang. There. That's just a little rough idea of mine. And now we'll go back downstairs to the music room, and Peppino and Georgie will put their wise heads together and tell us what to do.
And that is easily done. They repeat what she has just said, and she corrects them when they go wrong.
That will do beautifully. Such a clever idea of yours, Peppino. And now, Georgie, did you bring your music with you?
What? Now? No.
Then we can use mine. Let us allow heavenly Mozart to calm us after these tribulations. I'm sure Daisy and Peppino will find our duet a help too.
Oh, yes, indeed, cara.
Well, I don't know about that.
You must be patient with me, Giorgino, for you know how badly I read. Oh, how difficult it looks. Lucia frightened. She never saw such a dreadful thing to read.
Oh, Georgie's is much more dreadful. Georgie frightened too at reading it. Oh, cattivo Mozartino, to write anything so dreadful diffy.
Come now, Giorgino. Uno, due, tre, and away we go. Reason why I should not conduct the yoga lessons from now on. After all, I can hold my breath much longer than Georgie can, and I've mastered many more postures than Peppino has. And poor dear Daisy always teeters most terribly whenever she stands on one leg, whereas I never do. Yes, I shall take the chelas in their yoga class tomorrow in my teaching robe. So becoming.
In Some Arrivals and a Precipitant Departure, Part 2 of Queen Lucia by E F Benson, the narrator was Aubrey Woods. Lucia was played by Barbara Jefford, Georgie by Jonathan Cecil, Peppino, David Garth, Daisy, Jane Wenham, Lady Ambermere, Fabia Drake, Olga Bracely, June Tobin, the Guru, Badi Uzzaman, Foljambe, Helena Breck, the Railway Porter, Michael Jenner, Hermy and Ursy, Helen Atkinson Wood and Moya Leslie, and Tiptree, Leonard Fenton. The pianist was John Owen Edwards, and the director, John Cardy. Queen Lucia, a 5-part comedy series based on the novel by E F Benson, dramatised and narrated by Aubrey Woods. With Barbara Jefford as Lucia, Jonathan Cecil as Georgie Pillson, June Tobin as Olga Bracely, and Fabia Drake as Lady Ambermere. Part 3, A Fresh Rebellion.
No, Grosvenor, Mr. Lucas and I will just have a tray at luncheon time. So much to do if this afternoon is to be a success.
Very good, ma'am.
Peppino!
Yes, cara?
I think everything is now ready.
Mrs. Emmeline Lucas, known to her more intimate friends as Lucia and acknowledged by the rest of this blatantly Elizabethan village to be Queen of Riseholme, is casting her bright bird-like eye over the final preparations for her garden party, to be held in great style this afternoon.
Are the bowls laid out in the bowling alley?
Oh, everything is...
They do give such an Elizabethan air to our little giardino, do they not, Caro?
Oh, yes, indeed, Lucia mia. And Grosvenor has taken the oriental rugs out of the small tent, now that the guru will not be with us.
I've told everybody that he had a great call from his guides and had to leave at once to instruct some other seeker after the way. Georgie and the Quantocks will, I trust, all stick to that story, and not a word about the burglaries, or about the wretched creature being nothing but a tipsy curry cook as well as a thief.
Oh, I'm sure they will be discreet.
I hope so. I think I convinced them that they would, none of them, wish to appear gullible. Now, let me think. Tea in the smoking room for Lady Ambermere, ourselves, Georgie, of course, and Olga Bracely and her husband. And is the music room ready?
Oh, yes, the piano tuner came this morning. I arranged the seats myself after he left and placed the copy of Siegfried open on the music rest. Oh, what a triumph for you, Cara, to have Olga Bracely sing her great role at your garden party.
Well, not all of it, Peppino. And we must not presume that she will sing anything at all. But one never knows. Yes, I think dear Riseholme will be impressed.
It is 1:30 on this sunny late July morning in 1920, and just as Lucia and Peppino are sitting down to their luncheon trays, Olga Bracely, the opera prima donna, walks across from the Ambermere Arms to Georgie Pillson's house. Georgie receives her, dressed in a suit of fresh white flannels, a pink shirt, and a red tie rather loose and billowy. With his hair chestnut-coloured to the very roots, and his shining nails and his comfortable boots, he feels extremely young and fit for anything.
Ah, Miss Olga, do come in.
Mr. Georgie, my dear, it was so good of you to invite us, but I'm afraid my husband can't come.
What a pity. Oh, but it's quite all right.
His excuse is toothache, and he's driven into Brinton to find a dentist.
Oh, I am sorry.
You needn't be. For now I'll tell you his real reason. He thought that if he lunched with you, he would have to come on to the garden party, and that he was absolutely determined not to do. You were the thin end of the wedge, in fact. Oh, my dear. What a delicious house. All panelled, with that lovely garden behind.
I'm so glad you like it.
And croquet. May we play croquet after lunch? I always try to cheat, and if I'm found out, I lose my temper. Do you know what we did this morning, before the toothache didn't begin? We went all over that house 3 doors away, which is being done up. Oh, I wonder if you can keep a secret?
Yes.
Well, I'm absolutely determined to buy it. Only I daren't tell my husband till I've done it, so not a word.
I promise.
I shall buy it, make the garden, furnish it down to the minutest detail, engage the servants, and then he'll give it me as a birthday present. I had to tell somebody. I should have burst.
What a perfect plan. You really like our little Riseholme.
It's not a question of liking. It's a mere detail of not being able to do without it. I don't like breathing, but I should die if I didn't. I want some delicious, hole-in-the-corner, lazy, backwater sort of place where nothing ever happens and nobody ever does anything. Oh, and there's another mulberry tree as well as the one in your front. It's too much. And I know your parlour maid is called Paravicini.
No, Foljambe.
I knew I was right. It's practically the same thing. But last night, I never had such an awful evening.
Oh.
Why didn't you warn me? And my husband should have had toothache then instead of this morning.
Oh, what happened?
But the woman's insane, that Lady Ambermere.
Oh.
She really does look like a parrot, you know. We were 10 minutes late, and she had a jet tiara on. And why did she ask us for 7:45 if she meant us to dine at 7:45? Why didn't she say 7:30? They were actually going into dinner when we arrived.
Oh.
A mournful procession of 3 moth-eaten men and 3 whiskered women.
Oh, I know who those will have been.
We dined in the family vault and talked about Lady Ambermere's pug.
Oh.
Then she looked at my pearls and asked if they were genuine. So I looked at her teeth. There was no need to ask about them.
Don't miss out a moment.
After dinner, When we came into the drawing-room, the whiskered ladies and I, there was a little woman like a mouse sitting there, and nobody introduced her.
Oh, that would be poor Miss Lyle, the companion. Lady Ambermere leads her a terrible dance. Can't call a moment of her life her own. Do go on.
Well, it was 9:30 when the gentleman joined us. Then Lady Ambermere got up and said, "I hope you have brought your music, Mrs. Shuttleworth. Kindly open the piano, Miss Lyle. It was always considered a remarkably fine instrument."
Oh, my dear, how awful for you.
That's a stupendous cheek. I thought it must be a joke and laughed, with the greatest politeness. But it wasn't. You'll hardly believe it, but it wasn't. One of the whiskered ones said, "Oh, that will be a great treat." And another put on the face that everybody wears at concerts, and I was so stunned that I sang. And Lady Ambermere beat time, and Pug barked.
Oh, that tiresome dog. It has fleas.
We found that out later. Never till the day of judgment, when Lady Ambermere gnashes her beautiful teeth for ever and ever, will I set foot in that house again. Nor she in my house. I'll set fire to it sooner. There. Oh, my dear. May we have lunch at once, and then play croquet as soon as we're finished? I'm famished.
Yes, of course. Oh, what fun. I'll ring for Foljambe.
Foljambe? What time's the garden party start?
5 o'clock. And, shall I tell you who'll be there first?
Yes.
I'm famed for my punctuality, am I not, Miss Lyle?
Oh, Georgie, I do like you.
Lucia's garden party is scheduled from 5 to 7, and the garden itself is looking particularly attractive. Lady Ambermere arrives, as expected, punctually at 5 o'clock.
You have a pretty little garden here, Mr. Lucas, though perhaps inconveniently small. Your croquet lawn does not look to me the full size, and there is no tennis court. Presently I will walk round with you and see your domain.
Oh, it will be such a pleasure, Lady Ambermere.
Put Pug down again, Miss Lyle, and let him run about. See, he wants to play with one of those croquet balls. Put it in motion for him, and he will run with it. Bless me, who is that coming up the path at such a tremendous speed in a bath chair?
Well, I think it's...
Oh, I see, it is Mrs. Weston. She should not go as fast as that. If Pug was to stray onto the path, he would be run over. Better pick him up again, Miss Lyle, till she has gone by. And there is Colonel Boucher. If he had brought his bulldogs, I should have asked him to take them away again. I should like a cup of tea, Miss Lyle, with plenty of milk in it and not too strong. You know how I like my tea. And a biscuit or something for Pug, with a little cream in a saucer or something that's handy.
Won't you come into the smoking parlour and have tea in there, Lady Ambermere?
The smoking parlour? How very strange to lay tea in a smoking room.
Oh, it has not been used for the purpose of smoking for many years, Lady Ambermere. Both Mrs. Lucas and I are abstainers.
Oh, if that is so, I will come. Better bring a Pug along too, Miss Lyle. Oh, is this a croquet hoop? Well, I'm glad I saw it, or I should have stumbled over it. So this is the smoking parlour, is it? Why do you have brushes on the floor? Put Pug in a chair, Miss Lyle, or he may prick his paws. Books, too, I see.
Oh, yes.
The library at the Hall is famous for its classical literature. The first Viscount collected it, and it numbers many thousands of volumes.
Oh, indeed, it is the most wonderful library.
I am a great student myself, and often spend a morning there. Do I not, Miss Lyle? Oh, by the way, your good wife told me that there was a very remarkable Indian who would be at her party. A Brahmin from Benares, she said. I should like to talk to him while I am having my tea. Prepare a peach for me, Miss Lyle.
I fear that Mrs. Lucas's guru has had a call from his guides and has had to...
That one nearest me looks eatable. And then I do not see Miss Olga Braceley, though I distinctly told her I should be here this afternoon. And she said Mrs. Lucas had asked her.
Oh, indeed.
I hope to hear her sing again. She sang to us yesterday evening at the Hall, and very creditably indeed. Her husband, Mr. Shuttleworth, is related to my family.
Peppino, are you looking after Lady Ambermere?
Of
Dear
course
Lady Ambermere, I hope they're taking care of you.
A very decent peach. The south wall of my garden is covered with them, and they are always of a peculiarly delicious flavour. The whole is famed for its peaches. But Mrs. Lucas, I understood that Miss Bracely was going to be here. I cannot imagine what makes her so late. I was myself always famed for my punctuality.
Or would you care for another cup of tea, Lady Ambermere?
No, thank you. I have already had 3, and that is quite sufficient.
I'm sure Miss Bracely will be here at any moment, Lady Ambermere. She and Mr. Shuttleworth may have had important matters of a professional nature to delay them. The calls of art upon an artist cannot be denied, as I well know. But as she knew your ladyship was to grace us with your presence, I am sure...
I tell you where she is. Oh, Mrs. Weston, pray do not attempt to propel your bath chair in here. Pug might fall beneath your wheels. Pick him up, Miss Lyle. Oh. I will approach the door, Mrs. Weston, and you shall tell me your news.
The last time I saw Miss Bracely, she was making a beeline across the green towards the 3rd house with the mulberry tree, and we all know who lives there.
Georgie, I wondered where he was, Peppino.
And that's why they're both late. He's giving her lunch. And now it's 6 o'clock. Wonder what they've been up to.
Up to? Oh, Peppino, how grateful I am that I haven't a mind like Mrs. Weston's. Horrid.
Mrs. Lucas. I hope you don't mind, but I've taken the liberty of shifting a couple of chairs in the music room so that Mrs. Weston can get her wheelchair close to the piano.
Oh, yes, Colonel
I saw a
Boucher.
copy of Siegfried on the music stand. A wonderful surprise to get Miss Bracely to sing. We've all been bagging seats.
Oh, Colonel Boucher, Mrs. Weston, do all go back into the garden.
Oh, as you say, dear lady.
Well, it is a garden party. And what's all this about singing and playing? I know nothing of it. Oh, come along, everyone, into the garden.
Better be going. I have long finished my tea. Miss Lyle, run out and find my people. Mrs. Lucas? Mrs. Lucas?
Yes, Lady Ambermere.
You've been very pleasant indeed, thank you. Goodbye, your charming garden, yes.
But it's very early. It's hardly 6:30.
Indeed, it has been so charming.
If you're going, I'll accompany you to the gate, Lady Ambermere, and make sure your people have brought your motor up.
Where are my people?
Colonel, not leaving so soon, surely.
I have to see to the bulldogs, Mrs. Lucas. Get rested if I'm away too long. Wonderful party, as ever. Sorry not to see your Indian, though. Had a sudden call, did he?
Would you be so kind as to give me a push, Colonel, if you're on your way?
Excuse me, dear lady. I must attend to Mrs. Weston.
I always have a bit of difficulty getting up and down these paths. Sorry, Miss Bracely and Mr. Georgie didn't manage to get along, Mrs. Lucas. Must have been a 14-course lunch he gave her.
Are you ready, dear lady?
Yes, and thank you, Colonel.
Delighted, dear Mrs. Weston, delighted. Do take my arm, Lady Ambermere.
Miss Lyle, bring Pug. Proceed, Colonel.
Oh, Peppino, everybody is leaving.
Well, Cara,
How could Georgie have... No, I don't blame him. He is merely weak. That woman has taken advantage of his kind nature. Oh, here they come, at last. I wonder what they've been up to.
Dear Mrs. Lucas, Mr. Georgie and I are terribly late, and it was quite my fault.
Oh, no.
Yes, Georgie. There was a game of croquet that wouldn't come to an end. And my life has been guided by only one principle, and that is to finish a game of croquet. Whatever happens, I missed 6 trains once by finishing a game of croquet. And Mr. Georgie was so unkind. He wouldn't give me a cup of tea or let me change my frock. Dragged me off to see you.
And I won! Ah, Miss Bracely. I thought I recognized you as you and Mr. Georgie rushed across the grass. Pug became quite agitated, but Miss Lyle has taken him ahead to the music room, where she will arrange me an advantageous chair. Shall we all proceed there immediately? I do not care to be out too late. It is to be Siegfried, is it not, to judge by the Colonel's report of the music on the piano? Miss Bracely greatly admired my Broadwood, but I imagine your instrument will prove adequate.
Come, Peppino.
Oh! Georgie, I don't believe it. It's like a recurring nightmare. And I vowed to myself I'd never let it happen again. What can I do, Georgie?
I think it's all monstrous. Do you want to leave? Let's get away before anyone can stop us.
Oh, I couldn't, much as I long to. Poor Mrs. Lucas. Come on, best face forward.
I think you're marvellous.
So do I, Georgie. So do I.
Oh, Mrs. Lucas, would you like me to sing? Yes?
Oh, how kind.
And there's a copy of Siegfried. Do you play?
Is it very diffy? Could I read it, Georgie? Shall I try? Me to begin. 1, 2, 3, now. Oh no.
No, once more.
Oh, it is diffy. Georgie,
yes.
Get ready to turn over.
Yes.
Shall I try?
Georgie, good morning.
Good morning, Lucia. My word, the men have taken your marquee away quickly. When I last gave a garden party, they left it there for ages. The grass went quite yellow.
I fear my little Giardino has suffered at the shoes of my guests, but so worthwhile. Even though Cattive Giorgino and Miss Bracely played croquet so long before coming here, but Lucia not angry with you. And Miss Bracely... Oh, I really must remember to call her Olga, as she positively begged me to last evening. Olga did so enjoy singing for us. I could read it in her eyes. So much more rewarding for her to perform for a small coterie of true music lovers than to sing to an opera house full of, I can only call them sensation seekers. Any news?
Well, I don't know about Olga not liking singing in opera houses. From what she tells me, she adores it, and they pay her a lot of money. But, oh yes, I have got some news. Haven't you heard yet? I was going to tell you last night.
The tenant of Old Place?
Yes.
Oh, Giorgino, as if I hadn't known all along. Why, Olga Bracely, of course.
But how on earth did you know she was coming at all? Well, I was just going to tell you that she was coming as a great bit of news. Oh, how tiresome. It spoiled all my pleasure. Who told you?
Little bird. Now I must run away and see to my mail. Such a pile of letters. Poor Lucia will be quite fatigato. Addio, Giorgino.
Although she gives her silvery laugh that starts, so she has ascertained, on A flat above the treble clef, Lucia is troubled by a tornado of agitated thought. Though Olga will undoubtedly be a great addition to the musical talent of Riseholme, it is possible that she might be almost too great an addition, and cause the gifted amateurs of Riseholme to sink into comparative insignificance. It is all very well for her to be a brilliant bird of passage for a few days, But it is a totally different matter to contemplate her permanent residence here. There is only one lawgiver in Riseholme, one court of appeal, one dispenser of destiny.
And that is me.
One morning, about the middle of October, Lucia and Peppino are seated at breakfast.
You look rather grave, Cara. What is the matter?
This note, Peppino, left earlier this morning and written in pencil.
Pencil?
Pencil. Do look in at Old Place about 9:30 on Saturday and be silly for an hour or two. We'll play games and dance, shall we? Bring your husband, of course, and don't bother to reply. Signed O.B. Olga Braceley, presumably. Rather short notice.
We're not doing anything, are we?
No, it wasn't that I meant. But there's a little more informality about it than one would expect.
Well, probably it's an informal party.
It certainly seems most informal. I'm not accustomed to being asked quite like that.
Oh, I see what you mean, Cara.
It is a fortnight since I called on her, and she has not even returned the call. I dare say they behave like that in London in certain circles, but I don't know that London is any the better for it.
Well, she has been away twice since she came. She's hardly been here for a couple of days together yet.
I may be wrong. No doubt I am wrong. But I should have thought she might have spared half an hour out of those days in returning my call. However, she thought not.
Then perhaps it would be better if we didn't go, Cara.
Nonsense, Peppino. Of course we're going.
Well, Old Place is looking quite festive, do you not think? A light at practically every window.
Rather a profligate waste of electricity, I would say. But with the husband absent, I suppose there is nobody to keep a check. Ring the bell, Peppino.
Oh, yes, of course.
Oh, listen. Gramophone.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Mr. and Mrs. Lucas.
This way, if you please. Miss Braceley and her guests are all in the music room. If you'll please slip in very quietly, ma'am.
Peppino, she's dancing on a dais by herself to the gramophone.
Shocking.
Oh, is nobody going to greet us? Dear me, very informal.
Excuse me, I'm a little out of breath. Welcome to the party. Georgie, bring Mr. and Mrs. Lucas a lot of champagne.
Certainement, madame. You see, I'm the wine waiter. Clear the way there, if you please. Prenez garde aux bouteilles. La pluie m'attend.
How wise you were to miss that very poor performance. But Mr. Georgie insisted that I should make a fool of myself.
Indeed, I am sorry not to have been here for it, but it seemed to me very far from being a poor performance. Very far indeed. Caro mio, you remember Miss Braceley?
Oh, sì, molto bene.
Oh, and you talk Italian. Che bella lingua. Wish I knew it.
You have very good pronunciation.
Grazie tante. Oh, you know everyone here, of course. Now, what shall we do next? There are some cigarettes. Won't you have one?
A cigarette for me? That would be a very odd thing. You see, I never smoke. Never.
You should learn. Now, let's play clumps.
Yes.
Does everyone know clumps?
Yes.
If they don't, they'll find out. Or shall we dance? There's the gramophone to dance
Oh,
to.
please. No gramophone.
Oh, don't you like it? It's so horrible that I adore it. But I think we won't dance till after supper. We'll have supper extremely soon because partly I am dying of hunger and partly because people are sillier afterwards. Yes, come on then, clumps. Clumps? Now let's see. There are enough for 4 clumps. So please make 4 clumps, everybody. And will you and 2 more go out with Mr. Georgie, Mrs. Lucas? We'll be as quick as we can. And we won't think of anything that'll make Mr. Georgie blush.
What's that?
Oh, there he is. He heard. Now, pick your fellow clumpers, Georgie.
Oh, yes. Now, I've got Lucia, so it better be Colonel Boucher, and let me see.
Don't keep us in suspense.
No, hurry up, or famine will set in.
I'm just teasing you all. Right, come along, Mrs. Weston.
I was always rather good at this when I was a girl. Now give me a push, Colonel.
Off we go then.
When the sumptuous supper is over, they all return to the music room and play musical chairs. Georgie is in charge of the gramophone. He quite forgets that its music is an agony to Lucia, and is not even aware when she makes a sign to Peppino, and they slip away. Nobody notices when Saturday ends and Sunday begins, for Georgie and Colonel Boucher are cockfighting on the floor. Georgie screaming out when he is upended, and Colonel Boucher very red in the face, saying,
I never thought I should romp again like this. By Jove, it's most amusing.
Riseholme gets up rather late next morning and has to hurry over its breakfast in order to be in time for church. There is a slight feeling of reaction abroad, a sense of having been young and amused, and of waking now to the fact of church bells and middle age. But as Mr. Rumbold walks from his stall to the pulpit for the sermon, there comes a stupefying surprise. From the organ, the short introduction to Bach's Du meine glaubiges Herz, which even Lucia has allowed to be nearly equal to Beethoven, and then the voice of Olga Bracely. The congregation sits spellbound, and afterwards Mrs. Weston draws half a crown from her purse instead of her usual shilling to be ready for the offertory. Mrs. Quantock wonders if she is too old to learn to sing, and Colonel Boucher turns to Georgie Pillson.
By Jove, Pillson.
Adorable.
When he lunches with her and Peppino that day, Georgie finds Lucia very full of talk and markedly more Italian than usual.
Ben arrivato, Georgie. Ho finito il libro di Antonio Caporelli. Questo momento è magnifico. Sono un poco fatigata dopo il... dear me, how rusty I'm getting in Italian, for I can't remember the word. Anyhow, I'm a little tired after last night. A delightful little party, was it not? It was very clever of Miss Bracely to get so many people together at so short a notice. Once in a way, that sort of romp is very well.
Oh, once in a way, I do so agree, Lucia.
I enjoyed it quite enormously.
I saw you did, cattivo ragazzo. You quite forgot about your poor Lucia and her horror of that dreadful gramophone. I had to exert all the calmness that yoga has given me not to scream. Ah, è pronto la colazione. Andiamo.
Oh, a menu, Lucia, at lunch. And written in Italian, too. Molto bello.
Yes, we're helping ourselves. Some for you, my dear.
Thank you, caro.
And for you, Georgie.
Yes, macaroni cheese.
Macaroni con formaggio.
Ah, delicioso.
Now, I shall want a lot of Giorgino's tempo this week, for Peppino and I have quite settled we must give a little after-dinner party next Saturday, haven't we, Caro?
Oh, yes, indeed, Cara.
And I want you to help me to arrange some impromptu tableaux, Georgie. Everything impromptu must be sketched out first. I dare say Miss Bracely worked a great deal at her dance last night, and I wish I had seen more of it. She was a little awkward in the management of her draperies, I thought, but I dare say she does not know much about dancing. Still, it was very graceful and effective for an amateur.
Oh, but she's not quite an amateur. She's played in Salome.
Indeed, I'm sorry she played in that. With her undoubtedly great gifts, I should have thought she might have found a worthier subject. Some water, Georgie?
Yeah.
About our tableau now. Peppino thought we might open with the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots. He would be the executioner and you the priest. And then I should like to have the awakening of Brunhilde.
That would be lovely. Have you asked Miss Olga if she will?
Giorgino mio, you don't quite understand. This party is to be for Miss Bracely. I shall be Brunhilde. I thought Peppino would be Siegfried, and perhaps you could learn just 15 or 20 bars of the music and play it when the curtain was up. You can play the same over again if it is encored.
I don't think I could learn it well enough in that time for it to be encored.
Not the music, Georgie, the tableau. And then, how about King Cophetua and the beggar maid? I should be with my back to the audience and should not turn round at all. It would be quite your tableau.
By this time, Georgie has got an inkling of the import of all this. There is not at present to be war, there is to be magnificent Medician rivalry, artist gloriously competing with artist in splendour. Lucia fixes Georgie with her black beady eye and smooths her undulating hair.
I do not propose to have games, romps, shall I call them? Art is not advanced by romping. And as far as I know, Riseholme, and perhaps I know it a little better than dear Miss Bracely, Riseholme does not care for that sort of thing. I'm sure she was prompted by only the most hospitable motives, but how should she know? That supper, too. Peppino counted 19 empty champagne bottles.
18, Carissima?
I think you told me 19, Caro, but it makes very little difference. 18 empty champagne bottles standing on the sideboard, and no end to the caviar sandwiches which were left over. There was a display about it, Georgino. And you know how I hate display.
Yes, I suppose I
In
do.
all the years I have lived here, I have heard no complaints about my suppers, nor about the quality of entertainment which I offer my guests when they are so good as to say si to my little invitazione. 200 caviar sandwiches being left over, and such wasteful cutting of the ham. I had to slice the chunk she gave me over and over again before I could eat it.
Well, I had an excellent supper, and I enjoyed it very much. Besides, I saw Peppino tucking in like anything. Ask him what he thought of
Georgino,
it.
you are a man, and tuck in, as you so vulgarly call it, without thinking. I am saying nothing against the supper, but I'm sure that Peppino would have felt better this morning if he had been wiser last night.
Cara, I feel
But
perfectly
that's
well
not
now.
the real point. I want to show Miss Bracely, and I'm sure she will be grateful for it, I want to show her the sort of entertainment that has contented us at Riseholme for so long. I will frame it on her lines. I will ask all and sundry to drop in with just a few hours' notice, as she did. Last night there was a little bit, how shall I say it, a little bit of the footlights about it all. And the footlights didn't seem to me to have been extinguished at church time this morning. Her singing of that very fine aria was theatrical. I can't call it less than theatrical. Theatrical.
Well, after all, Lucia, she is an opera singer.
Dear Georgie, so loyal to your new friend. Now let us have coffee in the music room. Shall Lucia play a little bit of noble Beethoven to take away nasty taste of gramophone? She no likey gramophone at all. Never. I think I will have a little dinner party first. I will ask Lady Ambermere. That will make us 4 with you, Georgie, and Miss Bracely and Mr. Shuttleworth will make 6. The rest I shall ask to come at 9, for I know Lady Ambermere does not like late hours. But now, the master.
Early on Tuesday morning, the devil enters into Daisy Quantock, and Lucia, on sighting this red flag of revolution so blatantly hoisted over Riseholme, sends for Georgie.
Mr. Pillson, ma'am.
What is it, Lucia? I got your message when I was in the bath. I came as soon as I could.
That woman, Georgie.
Do you mean Olga?
No, Daisy. Daisy Quantock.
What's she done?
She must have malicious second sight. There is no other explanation. She has invited everyone to a good romp on Saturday evening. Our little dinner with Olga and Mr. Shuttleworth is safe, but the party afterwards was to have been impromptu. I telephoned all our friends as soon as I heard of Daisy's intention, but she had bespoken them all.
But what about the tableau? We three can't very well do tableau for just Miss Olga to look at.
The merit of the tableau does not consist in the number of the audience. Well, then, perhaps you had better pop round and appeal to Daisy's better nature.
Me?
Although, personally, I doubt whether she has one.
But I shan't know what to say.
Please, Georgie, you have such tact. I know how you've looked forward to these tableaux, and I should hate you to be disappointed.
You've come about this business on Saturday, haven't you?
How wonderfully you guessed that. I thought I might see if we couldn't arrange something if we put our heads together. It's such a pity to split up. Lucia has got Miss Olga and her husband coming.
And I've got everybody else. And Miss Bracely is coming here if she gets away early. Probably with such a small party she will.
Oh, I shouldn't count on that. We're having some tableaux, and they always take longer than you think. Oh, dear me, I shouldn't have said that, as they were to be impromptu. But you know how thorough Lucia is.
I hadn't heard about them. Well, I don't want to spoil Lucia's evening, for I'm sure nothing could be so ridiculous as 3 people doing tableau for 2 others.
That's very understanding of you.
On the other hand, I don't want her to spoil my evening. For what's to prevent her going on with tableau till church time if she wishes to keep Miss Bracely away from my house?
I'm sure she doesn't want to do that. In any case, none of us could go on doing tableau all night. Even Lucia.
I'm not so sure. Well, let me think. How would it be if we had the tableau first at Lucia's and then came on here?
Yes.
If Lucia cares to suggest that to me, and my guests consent, I don't mind doing that.
Oh, thank you, Daisy.
But I shall want everybody here by 10:45 sharp.
Yes, of course. Yes.
It's going to be a romp, with round games, hunt the slipper musical chairs, and prizes.
There's going to be musical chairs and round games and hunt the slipper and prizes, and she won't start her party till yours is over, so it's all settled.
Well done, Georgie. Now, we can soon let everybody know, and I think we might allow ourselves a little more elaboration in our preparations. Yes. Now, there is an Elizabethan axe at the Ambermere Arms, which I might borrow. And then about the Brunhilde tableau. It is dawn, is it not? We might have the stage quite dark when the curtain goes up and turn up a lamp very slowly behind the scene so that it shines on my face. Could you manage that with one hand from the piano, Georgino?
I'm quite sure I couldn't.
Well, then Peppino must do it before he comes on.
But my dear...
We will have movement in these tableaux. I think that will be quite a new idea. You come in, Peppino, just 2 steps. When you have turned the lamp up, you take off my shield and armour.
But my dear...
The music will never last out. I shall have to start earlier.
Yes, perhaps that would be better. And then I sit up very slowly and wave first my right arm and then my left and then both. And you kneel, Peppino. Would you answer that, Georgino?
Very well.
Now raise me up.
Hello, Mrs. Lucas's residence.
Oh, Georgie, it's you. Could I speak to Mrs. Lucas?
Oh, I'm afraid she's rehearsing at the moment, Miss Olga. Could I take a message?
Oh, would you, Georgie? I'm a perfect fool and horribly forgetful. It's about Saturday.
Ah, yes.
We're going away for the weekend.
Oh.
Will you tell Mrs. Lucas how sorry I am?
Oh, well, I'm very sorry too. Yes, I'll tell her. Goodbye.
Well, what is it?
It's Miss Olga. She's only just remembered that she and Mr. Shuttleworth are going away for the weekend. Oh, she's terribly sorry.
Oh. I am sorry that Miss Bracely will not see our tableaux, but as she was not acting in them, I do not know that it makes much difference. Yes?
Excuse me, ma'am. Miss Lyle just left this note for you from her ladyship.
Thank you. Well, really? How dare... No!
Lucia, cara, what is it?
Listen to this. Dear Mrs. Lucas, I was in Riseholme
this morning and learnt from Mrs. Weston that Miss Bracely will be at your house on Saturday night. It would be a great pleasure to hear her sing again, so I shall be enchanted to come to dinner. But would you have it at 7:30 instead of 8 o'clock, as I do not like being out very late?
Peppino, perhaps you would kindly tell Miss Lyle that I do not expect Miss Bracely on Saturday, and that therefore I do not expect Lady Ambermere either. A verbal message will be quite sufficient.
Oh, my dear, I don't think
I will do it myself, then.
Sad to relate, the tableau on Saturday prove unlucky. For in the Brunhilde scene, Peppino, in his agitation, turns the lamp that is to be the sunrise completely out, and Brunhilde has to hail the midnight instead. Georgie, it is true, with wonderful presence of mind, turns on an electric light when he has finished playing, but that is more like a flash of lightning, and the party breaks up well before 10:45. As Georgie walks home after this depressing evening, he wants to fly away. Neither tableau nor romps hold the least attraction for him without Olga's sparkling presence. And then, all at once, it dawns on him.
I must be in love with Olga Bracely.
He stops dead opposite Mrs. Quantock's mulberry tree.
More misery, more unhappiness. Oh, how tiresome.
In A Fresh Rebellion, Part 3 of Queen Lucia by E F Benson, the narrator was Aubrey Woods. Barbara Jefford played Lucia, Jonathan Cecil, Georgie, Nerissa Knights, Grosvenor, David Garth, Peppino, June Tobin, Olga Bracely, Fabia Drake, Lady Ambermere, Ellen McIntosh, Miss Lyle, Margot Boyd, Mrs. Weston, Bernard Brown, Colonel Boucher, Jane Wenham, Daisy Quantock, and Colin Starkey, a footman. The pianist was John Owen Edwards, and the director, John Cardy. Queen Lucia, a 5-part comedy series based on the novel by E F Benson, dramatised and narrated by Aubrey Woods, with Barbara Jefford as Lucia, Jonathan Cecil as Georgie Pillson, and June Tobin as Olga Bracely. Part 4, Purgatory and a Princess.
Ben arrivata, Peppino! Che bella margaritas, non è vero?
On this bright, late October morning in 1920, Mrs. Emmeline Lucas, the acknowledged Queen of Riseholme, greets her husband on his return from the village green with one of the many Italian phrases with which they are wont to pepper their conversation. And Mr. Lucas greets her with the Italian name by which she is known to her closest friends.
Oh, sì, bella, bella, mia cara Lucia.
Lucia, from La Lucia, the wife of Lucas. She is admiring the Michaelmas daisies which abound in the garden of their blatantly Elizabethan house, the Hurst. The Hurst boasts a front door which appears to be of amazing antiquity. Lucia has had it studded with large iron nails of antique pattern fashioned by the village blacksmith, and has had him arrange some of them to look as if they spell AD 1603. It is from this door that Lucia's housekeeper, Grosvenor, emerges.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, Grosvenor, what is it?
This card has just been delivered, ma'am, by Miss Bracely's maid.
Thank you. Oh, Peppino. We are invited to an at-home at Old Place. Dear Olga Bracely, look.
Oh, yeah. Tomorrow. How pleasant. And music.
Really?
Yes, Cara. There, in the bottom left-hand corner.
Oh, yes. Well, let us hope it is not the gramophone again. How an opera singer of Miss Bracely's undoubted eminence could have countenanced a gramophone at her party the other evening, I cannot imagine. But this does say music, and I hardly think anyone at all, could describe that gramophone as music. I have told Grosvenor to put out our galoshes for our jaunt to Old Place this evening. The rain, I fear, shows no sign of...
Oh, my dear. Pardon my interrupting, but Miss Bracely's motor has just arrived at her door, and there are 4 men getting out.
Oh? Let me see. So there are. And there is a second motor stopping behind it.
Ah, they must be the musicians. I can distinctly see the shape of a cello case against the window of that second car.
Peppino, no. Poor Olga.
Why?
Don't you realize who they are? They're that awful string quartet who play in the lounge of the Royal Hotel at Brinton. After dinner. Oh, how sad. I heard them once, and that was quite enough. Well, I do find it strange that Olga should have hired those doleful fiddlers with all the opportunities she has of hearing good music. But after that gramophone, perhaps I should have known.
Then perhaps we should decline the invitation, Cara?
No, Peppino. I have given our word. And poor dear Olga does know my deep passion for music. It would be too unkind. But I do hope she does not insist on my taking the seat of honour.
Why not, my dear?
Why then, Peppino, I should be expected to address words of encouragement to the quartet, and I should find that difficult. One has one's standards. Oh, Peppino, Brinton, Beethoven. Of course, nothing can wholly take away the splendour of that glorious composition. But, oh, hush, here is dear Olga.
Oh, Mrs. Lucas, aren't they divine?
Perfect music, glorious, and they really played it very creditably. But I am a little spoiled, you know. For the last time I heard that, it was performed by the Spanish quartet. I know one ought never to compare. But have you ever heard the Spanish quartet, Miss Bracely?
But they are the Spanish quartet. It's a shocking room for echoes, this. Do all of you come a little nearer, and you'll be able to hear the playing so much better. You lose all shade, all finesse here. I came here on purpose to ask you to move up, Mrs. Lucas. There are half a dozen chairs unoccupied near the platform.
The following morning, Georgie Pillson sets off at 11 o'clock to visit a few shops and to gather the morning's gossip. Over his shoulders, for fear of the air being chilly, he has a little cape of a military cut, like those in which young ladies at music halls enact the part of colonels. And as he draws level with Olga Bracely's house, she leaps out of her front door and makes a piercing whistle on her fingers.
My dear, what is it?
Georgie, the most awful thing has just happened. Guess.
You've got to go away?
Not as awful as that.
Mrs. Weston's maid Elizabeth is going to be married to Colonel Boucher's Atkinson.
You don't say. But will they both leave? What will either of the others do? Mrs. Weston can't have a manservant, and how on earth is she to get on without Elizabeth?
My dear, there's only one thing that can happen to the Colonel and Mrs. Weston. They must marry each other too. Huh? Then Atkinson can continue to be Colonel Boucher's man and Elizabeth Mrs. Boucher's parlour-maid. So that's settled. It only remains for us to make them marry each other.
Aren't you getting on rather fast?
I'm not getting on at all at present. I'm just talking. Come inside instantly, and we'll drink vermouth. Vermouth always makes me brilliant, unless it makes me idiotic. But we'll hope for the best. Come on. Now drink fair, Georgie, and as you drink, tell me all about the young couple's emotional history.
Atkinson and Elizabeth? I don't know anything about...
my dear, Colonel Boucher and Mrs. Weston. Well, they do have an emotional history. I'm sure it was in the air once that they were going to marry each other. And they both like eating and drinking and the latest intelligence. And they constantly dine together tete-a-tete, don't they?
Yes, but aren't they rather old?
Not much older than you or me. Now, let's get back to the point. This afternoon, I dropped in to see Mrs. Weston, and as she was telling me about Elizabeth, she said, "I don't know what Jacob will do without Atkinson." Wasn't that an unselfish thought at such a moment?
Yes.
Well, I'd hardly got out of the house when I met him. Quite a domestic crisis, my dear. And so I pretended I didn't know, and he told me all about it. "I shall lose Atkinson, and poor Jane, I should say Mrs. Weston, will lose Elizabeth."
My dear, what a wonderful mimic you are. You should be on the stage. Oh, but you are.
But, Georgie, do you grasp the inwardness of that? Their dear old hearts were laid bare by the trouble that had come upon them, and each of them spoke of the other as each felt of the other. Oh. Have some more vermouth. It's making me brilliant. Now, listen. First of all, you are coming to dine with me tonight.
Oh, I'm afraid that tonight...
Oh, you're only going to wash your hair or something? You can do that tomorrow. So, you and I, and Mrs. Weston and Colonel Jacob, that's 4, which is enough since my dear husband is away on business and we can't include him. So, you will sit here quietly and have another vermouth.
I haven't started this...
I will tell you what I am going to do and what your part is to be. Another glass of champagne, Colonel.
Upon my word, Miss Bracely, you'll have me confessing my most heartfelt thoughts to the whole table. And on a moonlit night, too.
Oh, you men. All of you full of amorous designs, it seems. Look at Georgie there. I'm sure he's planning to forsake bachelordom soon.
Now, you're not prizing any secrets out of me tonight.
Georgie. And how long did you say your admirable Atkinson had been with you, Colonel?
20 years. Getting on for 21. It's a great nuisance. Upon my word, it is more than a nuisance.
Well, it's too miserable for you too, Mrs. Weston. I mean, how will you get on without your Elizabeth? How long has she been with you?
Well, she was 17 when she came to me. No, she was just 18. And that's 15 years ago. And that makes her 33. Well, Elizabeth, I said, you haven't told me yet who it is, but whether it's the Archbishop of Canterbury or the Prince of Wales... But I felt I had to make a little joke like that. I hope you'll make him as happy as you've made me all these years.
How splendid of you, Jane.
And don't cry, Elizabeth, I said, for she was getting quite watery. But if you cry about a marriage, what'll be left for a funeral?
I told Atkinson I wished I'd never set eyes on him before I wished him joy.
Well... Shall we leave the gentlemen to their port, Mrs. Weston? Look after Colonel Boucher, Georgie. Ring for anything you want. Oh, what a moon. Isn't it heavenly? How Atkinson and Elizabeth must be enjoying it.
The two men spend half an hour of only moderately enjoyable conversation, for Georgie keeps reminding the Colonel of the forthcoming misery of his lot without Atkinson, with the result that when the Colonel is at last permitted to join the ladies in the music room, he is athirst for their more congenial companionship.
Good. Here they are.
Yes. Colonel. George is so lazy that it's no use asking him. But do let you and me have a turn up and down my garden. before coffee? It's a divine moon, and it's quite warm.
I'd be delighted, dear lady, if the other dear lady will allow.
Well, of course, Colonel. I shall be quite safe with Mr. Georgie.
Don't be too sure, Mrs. Weston.
Come along, Colonel. Fancy it's being October. I don't believe there is any winter in Riseholme. Nor autumn either, for that matter. There. Oh, Colonel, you're all so young. So deliciously young. And look at Georgie in there. He's like a boy still. And as for Mrs. Weston, well, she's 25, not a day older.
Yes, a wonderful woman. Always agreeable and lively. Handsome, too. I consider Mrs. Weston a very handsome woman. Hasn't altered an atom since I first knew her.
Oh, it's quite horrid for you both losing your servants. Servants do become friends, don't they? Especially to anyone living alone. I mean, Georgie and Foljambe now. I shouldn't be a bit surprised if Foljambe had a mistress before very long.
No. Really?
Yes.
I thought you were just chaffing him at dinner. Pillson marrying, is he? Perhaps his wife will take some of his needlework off his hands. May I inquire the lady's name?
Oh, I only judged from what I thought I noticed in poor Georgie. I dare say I was quite wrong. Let's talk about something else.
Really, I must be very dull. Who is it, Miss Bracely?
Ah, how bad a man is at observing another man. Didn't you see him at dinner? He hardly took his eyes off her.
What? You don't mean Mrs. Weston? Well, you do surprise me. Surely such a fine lady, though lame, wouldn't look at a needlewoman. Well, leave it at that. It's growing a bit chilly. You'll be catching cold, Miss Bracely.
Yes, we'll go in. It is chilly.
Yes,
oh,
yes.
Colonel, wait for me.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Mrs. Weston.
Will you give me a
Goodbye.
push, Colonel?
Of course, my dear Jane. Delighted.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Be all right now. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Georgie, I've been a cad because I hinted that you were in love with Mrs. Weston.
What?
My dear, it was simply perfect. I believe it was the last straw.
Well, really?
I know, and I must be a cad again. I'm going upstairs to watch them. You come too. I shouldn't sleep a wink unless I knew that he'd gone in with her. Come, quick.
All right. It has been an exciting evening. I kept the Colonel's nose to the grindstone over the port about the miserable time he could look forward to without Atkinson.
Well done, Georgie.
But I'm not sure you should have said that about me and Mrs. Weston. I mean, suppose the Colonel had come back in out of the garden and hit me.
Oh, Georgie.
Oh, your bedroom. Are you sure?
Oh, really?
Oh!
Mind your shins on the dressing table. Oh, look. There they are. They've stopped at her gate.
I can't bear the suspense.
They've gone in.
Oh.
Now Atkinson will stop, and so will Elizabeth. Which house will they live at, do you think?
I don't know.
Aren't you happy for them?
The following Wednesday, Olga receives a letter from Signor Cortese, the great Italian composer. Might he come down to Riseholme that very day and lay his new opera Lucrezia at her feet, in the hope that she would raise it up and usher it into the world? She runs upstairs and calls to her husband through the bathroom door.
My dear, Lucrezia is finished, and that angel offers it to me. Now, what are we to do about dinner tonight? Mrs. Weston and Colonel Boucher are coming, and neither you nor they speak one word of Italian. You know what mine is. What are we to do? He hates talking English. You're not listening to one word I'm saying. Oh, I know. Mr. and Mrs. Lucas. They talk Italian. She's musical, too. That should help.
Olga writes at once to Lucia, mentioning that Cortese is to stay with them, but quite naturally saying nothing about the usefulness of Peppino and her being able to engage him in his own tongue, for that she takes for granted. Lucia accepts eagerly, and for the rest of the day she and Peppino make up neat little sentences to let off to the dazzled Cortese, just at the last moment to show that they could have talked Italian all the time had there been any occasion for doing so. Indeed, they are still rehearsing as they approach Olga's front door.
And if nobody mentions Rome, then you must bring it into the conversation. But not until we are just about to leave, of course. And I shall say, Roma, che bella città! Adoro Roma. Ed il mio marito. Non è vero, Peppino?
And I shall say, Cecil, mia marita parla italiano molto bene.
Yes, I think that should suffice. Ring the bell, Caro.
Yes, of course.
And if there is still time, we can always mention la bella musica.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, madam. Mr. and Mrs. Lucas.
My dears, how lovely.
How nice of you to ask us.
Yes,
How nice of you both to come at such short notice. Mrs. Weston and the Colonel are here.
Good evening, Mrs. Weston, Colonel.
Cortese hates talking English, so I shall put him between you and me at dinner, Mrs. Lucas. And you'll talk to him all the time, won't you? And you won't laugh at me, will you, when I join in with my atrocious attempts? I shall buttress myself on the other side with your husband, who will firmly talk across me to him. He'll be down in a minute.
My Italian is terribly rusty.
We'll ask Cortese that when you've had a good talk to him. Here he is.
Olga carissima, mi dispiace molto di averti fatto attendere. E anche i tuoi simpatico ospiti. Non credo che ci siamo incontrati prima.
Non stai per nulla in ritardo. Mr. and Mrs. Lucas, may I introduce my dear friend, Signor Cortese? La signora e suo marito parlano italiano.
Bene, benissimo. È così insolito trovare delle inglesi che sanno parlare una lingua a parte la loro. Veramente lieto di fare la vostra conoscenza.
Sì.
And this is Mrs. Weston and Colonel Boucher.
How do you do? Very happy to meet you. Ma mi dica, signora Lucas, che parti dell'Italia conosci meglio?
Sì, tante grazie.
No. In what district of Italy have you voyaged most?
In Roma. Che bella città. Adora Roma. Ed il mio marito. Non è vero, Peppino?
Sì. Mia marita parlavo italiano molto bene. Don't you think?
Dinner seems interminable to Lucia. She keeps a watchful eye on Cortese, and if she sees he is about to speak to her, she turns hastily to Colonel Boucher, asks him a question, and while he answers, makes up another sentence in Italian about the blue sky or Venice, and very meanly says to Cortese that her husband has been there, hoping to direct the torrent of Italian onto him. Olga, meantime, continues to understand all that Cortese says, and to reply to it with odious fluency. After dinner, they adjourn to the music room.
Allora lui si volta verso il pubblico e dice: I fiori di primavera non sono importanti. Mrs. Lucas, I have said to Mrs. Shuttleworth that this make all Italy laugh. The English conductor, he say, with losing his temper from the silly woman. The flowers that bloom in the spring, tra-la, have nothing to do with the case.
Yes. Molto bene. Molto divertente. Non è vero, Peppino?
Oh, sì.
È stata una cena meravigliosa. Molte grazie, mi caro Olga.
Mi fa piacere che ti sia divertito.
Now we all speak English. This is one very pleasant evening. I enjoy me very much. Ecco.
Parlate inglese molto bene. You speak English very well.
Thank you. Now, I make a great request of our beautiful hostess. Please, you try over my last scene for Lucrezia, just for pleasure.
If my guests have no objection.
Oh, no.
And if you'll play for me, I shall be delighted.
Sì, bravo, bravo.
Lucia sits throughout the great aria, leaning forward, with her chin in her hand, and the far-away look in her dark, bird-like eyes. But her mind is furiously busy, considering how to make anything whatever out of so bad a job. Blow after blow has been rained upon her palace door. It is little wonder that the whole building is a-quiver. She lies long awake that night, reviewing the full array of misfortunes which have assailed her during the past weeks, and it strikes her that the same malevolent influence inspires them all.
That woman. The Spanish quartet. Who could have guessed she would have squandered all that money to get them down from London? It was her clear duty to have put Spanish quartet on the invitation, not simply music. Music means the Brinton quartet, at least to anyone with a sane imagination. She is laying traps for me, traps, asking me to the house and then springing it upon me that I'm expected to talk Italian offhand like that. She means mischief. She wants to set herself up as a leader of art and culture in my village. And she shan't.
The following day, as he strolls down to luncheon with Lucia, Georgie is armed with a well-rehearsed, rolled-up copy of some of Debussy's morsels for the piano. Though he was not present at the dinner, he is further armed with the complete knowledge of the Signor Cortese debacle. Lucia, with superb effrontery, hails him in Italian, just as usual.
Ben arrivato, amico mia. Why, it must be 3 days since we met. Che ha fatto il signorino? And what have you got there?
Oh, these. Some little things by Debussy. I want to play one of them to you. I've just been glancing through it.
Bene, molto bene. But I can't promise to like it, Giorgino. Isn't Debussy the man who always makes me want to howl like a dog at the sound of the gong and wonder when it is going to begin? Where did you get them from?
Olga lent them me.
Oh, I see. Yes, I am sure she would admire that sort of music, and I will not condemn it before I have heard it. I suppose I am just old-fashioned. Yes, I was certainly too old-fashioned for the music she gave us last night. Dio mio!
Oh, didn't you enjoy it?
Georgie. Let us join Peppino in the dining room. I'm sure luncheon is ready.
Another parsnip, Georgie?
Not at the moment, thank you.
I pity poor Miss Braceley. To hear that lovely voice, for to do her justice, there are lovely notes in her voice, lovely. To hear that voice shrieking and screaming away in what she called the great scene was simply pitiful. There was no melody, and above all, there was no form. Simply a combination of engine whistles and grunts. Non è vero, Peppino?
Oh, si, indeed. Would you care for another parsnip, Cara?
No, thank you, Peppino. And Mr. Cortese, his appearance is like a huge hairdresser. His touch on the piano. If one can imagine a wild bull butting at the keys, you will have some idea of it. And above all, his Italian. I gathered that he was a Neapolitan. Yes, and we all know what the Neapolitan dialect is like. Totally unintelligible. For myself, and I speak for mio sposo as well, Georgie, I do not want to understand what Romans do not understand. La bella lingua is sufficient for me.
I hear that Olga could understand him quite well.
Oh, that may be so. I hope she understood his English, too, and his music. He had not an H when he spoke our language, and I have not the slightest doubt in my own mind that his Italian was equally illiterate.
Oh, and what was the libretto like in the piece that Olga sang?
That was quite different. The words were wonderful. They were as utterly wasted on that formless music as was poor Miss Bracely's voice. How did they go, Peppino?
Amore...
yes, amore misterio, amore profondo del vasto mar. Oh, beautiful words. I wonder who wrote the libretto.
Mr. Cortese wrote the libretto. Olga told me so.
Oh, dear me, no. If you had heard him talk, you would know he could not have done so. Well, have we not had enough of Mr. Cortese and his works? Any news? What did you do last night, Georgie, when Peppino and I were in our purgatorio?
Oh, yes, do tell us.
Well, now, I was dining with Mrs. Quantock. She had a very interesting Russian princess staying with her, Princess Popovsky, a medium.
Poor Daisy. Dear me, how easily some people are taken in.
We had a séance.
Indeed. And did you hear voices from the other side?
It's no use adopting that tone, Cara. You were not there. You were having your purgatorio at Olga's, and Mr. Cortese did write the libretto.
Do continue about the séance.
Well, it was very remarkable. We touched hands all round the table. There was a... Well, if you really don't want me to tell you, Lucia...
No, me did. Me very did, and me listen carefully. Tell, Lucia.
Well, Daisy turned down the lights, and then the table rocked and tapped out names, and then it actually whirled around, and it's a very heavy table. And then it told me I had 2 sisters. Now, how did the table know that? And then, while we were sitting there, the princess went into a trance. She called Mrs. Quantock Margherita, which, as you may know, is Italian for Daisy.
Thank you for explaining, Georgino.
Well, I didn't know if you knew. I thought it might be Neapolitan dialect.
Pray go on.
Well, then the princess went into another, very deep trance, and a spirit took possession of her.
And who was that?
His name was Amadeo. He was a Florentine who knew Dante quite well. He materialized. I saw him. He spoke.
Georgino, how wonderful. As you know, I'm sceptical by nature and want all evidence carefully sifted. I dare say I'm too critical, and that is a fault. Peppino is very critical too. I've caught it from him. But fancy getting in touch with a friend of Dante's. What would one not give? Tell me, what is this princess like? Is she the sort of person one could ask to dinner?
Yes, you might ask her.
Then we will have a little party. We 3, and dear Daisy and her husband, and the princess. I think that will be enough. Psychics hate a crowd because it disturbs the influences. I do not say that I believe in her power yet, but I am quite open-minded. I should like to be convinced. That is my attitude.
I'm sure you will be, especially by Amadeo. I saw him quite plainly, very white, with enormous eyebrows.
Well, we shall see. Now, Peppino, we're doing nothing tomorrow.
You...
Well, let us have our little dinner then.
But...
I will send a line to dear Daisy at once, and then, Giorgino mio, I will listen to your Debussy. But let me write my note first.
That is soon done, and having sent it by hand, she joins the gentleman in the music room and draws down the blinds over the window through which the October sun is streaming.
That is better, is it not? There is very little art that will stand daylight. Only Shakespeare and Dante and Beethoven and perhaps Bach can compete with the sun.
How very true, Carol.
Georgie, for his part, would like rather more light. But after all, Debussy wrote such very odd chords and sequences that it is not necessary to wear his spectacles. Lucia sits in a high-backed chair near the piano, with her chin in her hand, tremendously alert. Georgie takes off his rings, places them on the candle bracket, and runs his hands nimbly over the piano.
Poisson d'or.
Pesce d'oro, Peppino. Goldfish.
Lucia's face changes as the elusive music proceeds. The faraway look dies, and puzzlement takes its place. Her chin comes out of her hand, and the hand it comes out of covers her eyes. Before Georgie has got to the end, the answer to her note comes, and she sits with it in her hand, which, released from covering her eyes, tries to beat time.
Is it finished? And yet I feel inclined to say, when is it going to begin? I haven't been fed. I haven't drunk in anything. I'm very, very sorry, Giorgino, but you played it, I'm sure, beautifully. You were buono avvocato. Shall I open this note before we discuss it more fully? Give Georgie a cigarette, Peppino. I'm sure he deserves one after all those accidentals.
Georgie?
Thank you, Peppino. Tell me, what did you think?
Well, I am rather of the opinion...
I am sorry for that. Peppino, the princess does not go out in the evening. They always have a séance there.
Oh.
I dare say Daisy means to ask us some evening soon. We will keep an evening or two open. It is a long time since I have seen dear Daisy. I will pop in tomorrow, perhaps.
Daisy had acquired Princess Popovsky after a visit to her London dentist a week before. She had gone to a vegetarian restaurant and had been delighted to find herself sitting at a very small table with a very large lady who ate cabbages in perfectly incredible quantities.
Do you have enough room? Allow me to remove my handbag.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such an attractive restaurant. I've never been here before.
Are you always eating the vegetarian?
No, just from time to time. Are you? Do you?
Of course. It is the only possible diet for any who cultivates the psychical powers.
Psychical? Oh, how very interesting. And do those beautiful rings you are wearing have any mystical significance?
How swift of you to notice. They have indeed. This is Gnostic. This is Rosicrucian.
Fancy.
And this is Kabbalistic.
Oh.
You are interested in things occult?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, indeed.
I knew this. I was feeling as you sat down here that you two were like mine own self, a searcher after the psychical mysteries.
Did you really feel that?
Oh, indeed so. And always I am right. In confidence, if you would care to come to my flat this very afternoon at 4:30, I am holding a little séance.
Oh.
A few elect souls will gather. Here is my card.
Oh, Princess Popovsky. Oh, I should be honored, Your Highness.
Oh, please, no formality. We are all seekers after the truth. Is that not so?
Oh, yes.
And now, you look at the menu,
thank
and we talk of other matters.
During the course of their conversation, the princess asked many earnest and oblique questions as to Daisy's marital status, her circumstances and place of abode, all of which information the awestruck Daisy gave her, without even noticing. It was barely 4:30 when she arrived at the princess's flat, in a quiet side street just off Charing Cross Road. A small, dapper gentleman received her.
I'm the princess's secretary. Would you care to leave your coat?
Oh, thank you.
Not at all. The princess has been meditating. She'll come to herself presently. I leave you.
Yes.
It is my friend. Do you know that you have a purple halo?
No.
Only the most elect have purple halos.
Very gratifying.
Soon other elect souls gathered for the séance. In the centre of the table was placed a small handbell and a violin, and hardly had the circle been made and the lights turned down when the most extraordinary things began to happen.
Hello.
Oh, that's Pocky.
Who's Pocky?
A dear naughty boy, so full of fun. When he was on Earth, he was a Hungarian violinist.
I wish you all much laughter and joy. Hello. Here is new friend. I like her.
He means you.
We were having much heavenly music on other side this day. If new friend will say please, I will play some of it.
Oh, please, Pocky.
I am coming.
Oh, goodness.
Amadeo.
The spirit has taken hold of the princess. He's an Italian, been dead an awfully long time.
Io son venuto al punto della rota, che la ragione il sol si correo, si patterisce il geminato cielo, le stelle d'amor ci sta remota, per le regge lucente che l'anforcia.
The séance came to an end, and Daisy placed a guinea with the utmost alacrity in a sort of offertory plate, which the princess's secretary put negligently but prominently down on the table.
And when can I arrange to attend another séance?
Unfortunately, the princess is taking a holiday. She's been giving 3 séances a day for the past 2 months, and she needs a rest. We're off tomorrow for a week at the Royal Hotel at Brinton.
Brinton?
Oh, do you know that part of the country?
I live close to Brinton.
Really?
Do you think that she might be induced to spend a few days with me at Riseholme? My husband and I are much interested in psychical things. You would be our guest too, I hope.
Oh, very kind of you, ma'am. I'll mention it to her, of course, but I can't promise.
If she rested for a few days at Brinton first, and if she came to me afterwards, and if she was thoroughly rested, and if a little circle, perhaps of 4, at the usual price, would be worth her while, just after dinner, you know, and nothing else to do all day but rest.
Well, I'll talk to her.
Oh, it would be such a pleasure.
And when, 2 days later, Daisy returned to Riseholme, it was to prepare the spare room and Robert's dressing room for these thrilling visitors. Spiritualism and all things pertaining to it spreads over Riseholme like some advancing jungle, the centre of which is a temple, so to speak, and that temple is the house of Daisy Quantock, where violins give forth ravishing airs, the sitters are touched by unseen fingers, Pocky comes, visible to the eye, and plays spirit music, Amadeo recites Dante, and Cardinal Newman joins in singing Lead Kindly Light. Lucia all this time is almost insane with pique and jealousy, for she sits in vain waiting for an invitation to a séance. And at last, in desperation, she calls on Daisy.
Margherita, are you there?
Oh, dearest Lucia, the front door was open, was it? Such a stranger these days. How nice to see you. What is it?
I just popped in for a chat. I haven't set eyes on you since the evening of the Spanish quartet.
No? As long ago as that, is it? The Spanish quartet. Well, you must come in again sometime very soon, mustn't you? The day after tomorrow I shall be much less busy.
You have a visitor with you, have you not?
Yes, two indeed. Dear friends of mine. But I'm afraid you would not like them. I know your opinion about anything connected with spiritualism. And isn't it silly of us? We've been dabbling.
Oh, but how interesting. I'm always ready to learn and alter my opinions if I am wrong.
Yes. Then we will have a great talk about it when you come to see me. The day after tomorrow. Arrivederci.
Arrivederci. Daisy?
As she leaves, Lucia catches a glimpse through the open curtains of Daisy's sitting room of the princess, seated at a table, her massive arms bare, and upon them writhing serpent-shaped bracelets of many coils. In front of her reposes a splendid, glittering crystal ball. She smiles, not at Lucia, but at Daisy, as that perfidious woman re-enters the room from the hallway and with great deliberation kisses the tips of her fingers to Lucia and draws the curtains.
So, that is how she wants it to be. War. Well, Daisy Quantock, we shall see. We shall see about that.
In Purgatory and a Princess, Part 4 of Queen Lucia by E F Benson. The narrator was Aubrey Woods. Lucia was played by Barbara Jefford, Georgie by Jonathan Cecil, Peppino, David Garth, Daisy, Jane Wenham, Olga, June Tobin, Mr. Shuttleworth in his bath, Pocky and the Princess's secretary, Arnold Diamond, the Princess Popovsky herself, Margaret Robertson, a guest at her séance and Olga's footman, Colin Starkey, Cortese, Nicholas Courtney, Grosvenor, Nerissa Knights, and Colonel Boucher and Mrs. Weston, Bernard Brown and Margot Boyd. The pianist was John Owen Edwards, and the director, John Cardy. Queen Lucia, a 5-part comedy series based on the novel by E F Benson, dramatised and narrated by Aubrey Woods, with Barbara Jefford as Lucia, Jonathan Cecil as Georgie Pillson, and June Tobin as Olga Bracely. Part 5, Lucia Resurgent.
Hello, Georgie. What a fine sunny morning it is. Hard to believe we're already in November.
Good morning, Lucia. Oh, look! There's Mrs. Weston bowling across the green.
Hello, Mrs. Lucas. Oh, hello, Mr. Georgie. Oh, what a time we had at our spiritualist centre last night. I bought that planchette, and it came up with a beautiful script signed Annabelle. And that was my cook's late sister's name. Now, what do you think of that? Has yours come yet?
Oh, yes, it came this morning.
Well, I shall be most curious to see what it writes. So if you've got an evening free soon, just come round for a bit of dinner and we'll make a night of it.
Thank you. I shall look forward to that. What fun.
Oh, I must be off. Goodbye, Mr. Georgie.
Shall I give you a push?
Oh, no, thank you. I can manage.
Well, till we meet again.
Yes, till we meet again. Goodbye, Mrs. Lucas.
Goodbye.
Mrs. Emmeline Lucas, known to her friends as Lucia, has always stood aloof from all things occult, but to her chagrin this attitude has now excluded her from Daisy Quantock's séances, presided over by Daisy's new friend, the medium Princess Popovsky. After the first Popovsky séance, a veritable frenzy for spiritualism has seized Riseholme. But as winter closes in, fires are lit and curtains drawn, Daisy still extends no invitation to Lucia, who decides to repel this threat to her cultural autocracy by contempt.
Oh, Georgie, poor dear Daisy. I dropped in just now, and really I found her very odd and strange. What with her craze for séances and mediums, one wonders if she's quite sane. So sad. I should be dreadfully sorry if she had some mental collapse. That sort of thing is always so painful. But I know of a first-rate place for rest cures. I think it would be wise if I just casually dropped the name of it to her husband in case.
Well, she seemed quite well when I saw her at the last séance, quite brimming over with good health.
Oh, appearances can be so deceptive, Georgie. And what can be more indicative of a disturbed mind than sitting night after night round a table with someone who may or may not be a Russian princess? And as for being taken in by a pot of luminous paint or a false nose and calling it Amadeo, the friend of Dante, well...
But you asked Mrs. Quantock and the princess to dine with you, and hoped there would be a séance afterwards. Now, surely you wouldn't have done that if you thought it was only a false nose
I
and a
may
pot of
have
lumina...
been impulsive, but when I see the awful effects of this so-called spiritualism on people whom I should have thought sensible and well-balanced, I do not include poor Daisy among them, then I'm only thankful that my impulses did not lead me into countenancing such piffle.
Ah, who's that looking out of my drawing-room window? Oh, it's Miss Olga.
Don't have a fit, Georgie. I'm not a burglar.
Ah.
Something's happened to my kitchen range. I can't have lunch at home. Do give me some. Good morning, Mrs. Lucas. I've brought my crystal, Georgie, and we'll gaze and gaze. I can see nothing at present except my nose. Are you psychical, Mrs. Lucas?
No, dear Miss Braceley. I'm afraid I'm much too commonplace and matter-of-fact to care about such things. It is a great loss, I know, and deprives me of the society of Russian princesses and prima donnas, such as yourself. But we are all made differently. So lucky. I must get home, Georgie.
She walks quickly off, and Georgie enters his house. Lucia has really been remarkably rude, and there is a flush on Olga's face which she attempts to explain away.
I've been sitting over your roaring fire, Georgie.
Oh, I'm glad they've made you comfortable.
Shall we do some crystal gazing before lunch, or wait till after? I haven't seen a thing in my crystal yet.
Perhaps we shall be lucky today. If not, I shall complain to the princess at the next séance.
But the princess has decided that the time has come to end her overextended stay. And at breakfast one morning she informs Daisy that she and her secretary will be leaving the following Monday. Everyone who has attended the séances is at the station to see them off on the 11 a.m. express. And as the train speeds on to London, the princess opens the envelope which her hostess has given her and finds that that is all right. She looks for her cigarettes, finds them, and that is all right too. But she continues to search for something else. There is the violin in its case, some curious pieces of elastic, and a white mask. But still, with increasing concern, she continues to search. About the same time as she gives up the search, Mrs. Quantock wanders upstairs to the princess's vacated room, where a pleasant fire is still burning brightly.
What a triumph! And I didn't ask Lucia to one single séance. Spiritualism is mine. Oh, that final evening, with little Pocky appearing and playing his violin and Amadeo, and Cardinal Newman singing lead, Kindly Light. What a surprise! There has never been anything like this in Riseholme before. Oh, why does this silly jaw always stick? Oh, I hope it didn't annoy the... Goodness. What's all this? Muslin? 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 Oh, no. Oh, caterpillars. Ugh. No. No. No, they're not. They look like eyebrows. They are eyebrows. Amadeo's eyebrows. And the muslin is pocky. Oh. What shall I do? Oh, if I send it all back, it will be tantamount to accusing her of fraud. No, there is only one answer.
And Daisy Quantock, having shut the door firmly, throws the false eyebrows onto the fire. They turn to ash and fly up the chimney. Then she feeds the flames with muslin.
Oh, such lovely stuff. It would have helped with summer dresses for years. Oh, no. No, it must all go. There. No one must ever know, not even Robert. There. And once the grate is cleared out, all the evidence will have been got rid of, and no one will... Oh. Robert, how you startled me. I thought you were in the garden.
It looks as if there was a chimney on fire. What have you been doing? Wish it was the kitchen chimney. Then perhaps the beef mightn't be so raw as it was yesterday.
During the first weeks of December, Georgie is very busily engaged on a watercolour sketch of Olga, sitting at her piano and singing. Regularly, he takes his paint-box across to her house and sits with her. She is learning her part in Lucrezia, the opera which has been written for her by the famous Italian composer Signor Cortese, and while she practices her scales, Georgie bends over his sketching pad.
It's all so diffy. How am I ever to paint her with her mouth wide open, and yet still make it look like her? And how are people to know she is singing, and not yawning or preparing a sneeze? Of course, there is the piano. She wouldn't sit down at the piano just to yawn or sneeze. She could do that anywhere. Now, I think I shall shut her mouth. Yes, then she can be at her piano just about to sing. Oh, dear. Oh, she's so much more beautiful than anyone else I've ever painted.
But while Georgie studies Olga, Olga is watching Georgie.
Georgie? I'm going to scold you.
You're a selfish brute. You think of nothing but your own amusement. Did that ever strike you?
How horrid you are. You're always finding fault with me. Explain.
Well, you're neglecting your old friends for your new one. My dear, you should never drop an old friend. For instance, when did you last play duets with Mrs. Lucas?
Oh, well, not so very long ago.
Quite long enough, I'm sure. But I don't actually mean sitting down and thumping the piano with her. When did you last think about her and make plans with her and talk baby language?
Oh, who told you I ever did?
Everybody. Now poor Mrs. Lucas is feeling out of it and neglected and dethroned. Oh, I know it's partly my fault, and partly her own fault, because she's quite the stupidest woman I ever saw. But it's partly your fault, too.
Why?
Oh, come, Georgie, let's have it out. I'm perfectly powerless to do anything for her because she detests me.
Oh, I don't know. I mean,
yes, she does. Before I came here, she used to run you all and give you treats like going to her tableau and listening to her playing that old Moonlight Sonata and talking about 7 words of Italian. Truthfully, I did my best to be nice to her. But Georgie, she would continue to make such a dreadful ass of herself and think it was my fault. And I mean, was it my fault that she didn't know the Spanish quartet when she heard it? Or that she didn't know a word of Italian when she pretended she did? No, it just can't go on. We can't have the poor thing feeling angry and out of it. I would ask her in her Peppino every night, listen to her dreary tunes all evening, if it would do any good. But things have gone too far. She wouldn't come.
You know, I believe you are the incarnation of an angel. I mean, how you can forgive her odious manners to you.
My dear, shut up. No, we've got to do something. I know. How would it be if you gave a nice party on Christmas night, ask her to help you in getting it up, make it clear she's going to run it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I suppose... Well, you would come, wouldn't you?
No, I certainly will not. Don't you see it would spoil it all if I were at dinner? Huh? You must comfort her. Make her feel you can't get on without her. Make her give her tableau again and... But I think you must ask me in afterwards. Oh, Georgie, I long to see her and Peppino as Brunhilde and Siegfried. Just attend to her and buck her up. Promise me you will.
Well, I'll do my best.
Can't you paint her portrait and give it to her as a Christmas present? Oh, yes, I think you could. Playing the Moonlight Sonata.
Well, I don't know that I feel like doing that for her. Not after the way she's behaved towards you.
Do paint a little picture of her. She would love it. And make her young and interesting.
Oh.
Well, think it over anyhow. And now, won't you go at once and make sure of all your guests for Christmas?
Well, very well then. If that's what you want.
Georgie.
Yes?
I think you are a brick.
Georgie takes his picture and painting apparatus back to his own house and goes on to Lucia's, definitely conscious that though he does not want to have her to dinner on Christmas Day, or go back to his piano duets and aide-de-camp duties, there is a spice and savour in doing so that comes entirely from the fact that Olga wishes him to, that by this service he is pleasing her. And this realization can bring him to but one conclusion.
I've fallen in love with Olga Braceley. She's wonderful. She's big. She's...
At that moment his thoughts are diverted, for Robert Quantock comes out of his house in a violent hurry, merely scowls at Georgie, and positively trots across the green and into the newsagent's.
But that's the second time today. I saw him there this morning, buying that twopenny paper with the yellow cover. Todd's News, that's it. It was very genial then. Why is he grinding his teeth at me this time? Ah, he's coming out. And he's got a great bundle of yellow papers. What is he up to? I'll just pop across. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Pillson.
Could I have a copy of Todd's News, please?
I'm sorry, but Mr. Quantock has just bought up every copy I had.
Really?
Yes, and a copy of each of the other newspapers as well. In a rare old hurry he was.
Really?
Is that you, Robert?
Yes, I'm just going into my study for a while. Most important. Don't disturb me.
Very well, dear.
Now, the Times. Police reports, page 5. Theft of painting, drunk and disorderly. No, nothing. Thank God. Daily Telegraph. No. Daily Chronicle. Suspected anarchist. No, nothing. Morning Post. Horse thief trapped, contraband seized. Nothing. What a relief. Now, let's have another look at Todd's News. Bogus Russian princess. Mary Lowenstein. Calling herself Princess Popovsky. Bow Street Police Station. Fraudulent sales. Detective seized apparition. Found he had the woman Popovsky by the throat. Her secretary, Hezekiah Schwartz, is discovered under the table detaching an electric hammer. A fine was inflicted. Oh, good God. Now then, soak the fire up and burn the lot. Just a moment, my dear. Yes?
I thought there was a chimney on fire, as you did the other day.
Stuff and nonsense, my dear. Lunchtime, isn't it?
Yes. Look, the post has arrived. None for me and 2 for you.
Ah.
I haven't heard from my princess since she went away.
Oh, indeed. Have you written to her?
Well, I really don't believe that I have. That is remiss of me. What's all that burning in the fireplace?
Oh, that's just some old documents. No use anymore, only cluttering up the place. Now, come on, my dear. Let us see what your cook has ruined for luncheon today.
Georgie, by this time, has reached Lucia's house and clearly sees her standing at the window of the music room. He is about to wave when she suddenly disappears from his view, and the next moment the strains of some slow, familiar piano movement can be heard, played very vigorously. Grosvenor opens the front door and then shows Georgie into the music room.
Who is that? Oh, why, is it you, Georgie? What a stranger you are to the Hurst, aren't you? Any news?
I've heard none. I just dropped in.
Ah, that is very pleasant. Peppino and I have been so busy lately that we have seen nobody. We are quite country cousins, and so the town mouse must spare us a little cheese. How is dear Miss Braceley now?
Very well. I saw her this morning.
Oh, that is good. Peppino, do you hear? Miss Braceley is very well.
Oh, I am delighted. Is she really?
She's not overtired with practising that new opera, Lucie Grisia, was it? And dear Daisy, how is she? Still entertaining princesses? I look in the court circular every morning to see if Princess Popoff has popped off to see her cousin the Tsar again.
I don't think Daisy's heard from her since she left.
No, dear me. And you, Georgie, although I'm sure we're such strangers that I ought to call you Mr. Pillson. What have you been doing? Playing Miss Braceley's accompaniments all day and raising spooks all night? Yes? And Mr. Cortese, is he still roaring out his marvellous English and Italian? See? What a full life you lead, Georgie. I suppose you have no time for your painting now, yes?
No, I have been painting just lately. At least I've been trying to. I'm doing a little sketch of Miss Braceley at her piano. Oh, but it's so difficult. I wish I'd brought it round to ask your advice, but you'd have only screamed with laughter at it. But, however, just now, I want to engage you and Peppino to dine with me on Christmas Day.
Oh.
Now, don't be tarsome and say you're engaged.
A party?
How very kind. Well, I thought we would just have one of our old evenings again. We'll have the Quantocks, shan't we, and Colonel, and soon to be Mrs. Colonel, and you, and Peppino, and me. Oh, and the vicar's wife. The vicar's always singing carols all Christmas evening with the choir, and so the poor dear will be all alone.
Oh, dear me, those carols.
I know. I'll provide you with little wads of cotton wool for your ears. Oh, do come. I want you and Peppino, and the rest may come or stop away as they please. Oh, do say you approve.
So kind of you, Georgie, but I must think. Are we doing anything on Christmas night, carissimo? Where's your engagement book? Go and consult it.
Oh, certainly, my dear.
Oh, me so stupid. Me put it in smoky room. Poor Caro will look for it ever so long. Back in a minute, Georgina.
Oh,
This is a grand manoeuvre, and enables Lucia to have a short private consultation with Peppino. And when they come back, they are wreathed in smiles.
We are free, Georgino. And Peppino and Equal Lucia love to come to Din-Din's on Chrissy Day. Now, what shall we do after dinner? No romps, certainly not. But why not try our tableau again?
Oh, what a marvellous idea of yours, Lucia. And I might, with your permission, of course, invite everybody else in later, and we can surprise them with our tableau.
Oh, Georgie.
Christmas evening. It is about 8:15 when Georgie shows his guests to their seats at his round table without a cloth. Lucia is on Georgie's right.
Tante, Giorgino.
Mrs. Weston, or Mrs. Colonel as she has decided to call herself, is on his left.
Thoughtful.
Next to her, Peppino.
Oh, so kind.
Then Mrs. Quantock.
Thank you, Georgie.
Then the Colonel.
Upon my word, very civil of you.
Then the vicar's wife, who resembles a grey, suspicious mouse. And Mr. Quantock completes the circle round to Lucia again.
Very good of you, Pillson.
Everyone has a small bunch of violets in his napkin, but Lucia has the largest. She also has a footstool. Georgie hopes that Foljambe will be quick with the champagne, because there had been rather a long wait before dinner, owing to Lucia and Peppino being late, and conversation is still a little hesitant as Georgie carves the turkey.
Capital good soup that was. You can't get soup like that.
My gardener's boy hasn't got measles. I always said he hadn't. There are measles about.
And what news, Georgie? Peppino and I have been so busy that we haven't seen a soul all day. What have you been doing? Any planchettes?
Not really.
And dear Daisy, I needn't ask you what you've been doing. Table turning, I expect. I know how interested you are in psychical matters. I should be too, if only I could be certain that I was not dealing with fraudulent people.
Now, who haven't I served? Colonel, yes. Chestnut stuffing with your turkey?
Rather, thank you.
And force meat.
Yes.
Foljambe, pass the plate to Colonel Boucher, would you?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Everybody help themselves to bread sauce and vegetables, too.
You are quite right, dear Lucia. Would it not be terrible to find that a medium, some dear friend, perhaps, had been exposed as fraudulent?
Yeah.
One sees such exposures in the paper sometimes. They find the wretches well enough if they are caught, and they deserve it.
You and dear Robert have been very lucky in your spiritualistic experiences.
Oh, my word, yes. But one has to be very careful.
Indeed.
Suppose one found that a medium whom one had believed to be perfectly honest had yards and yards of muslin and a false nose or two concealed about her. Oh, it would sicken one of the whole.
Yes, that's right, Foljambe. Champagne for everybody.
Georgie, a word with you. Non conosce anybody. I tablini, I mean. And are we ready to sit in the aula while the salone is being got ready?
See, there's a fire. When you go out, keep them there. I domestici are making salone ready.
Molto bene. Then Peppino and you and I will just steal away.
Everybody else is coming in after dinner to see the tableau. Tutti.
Oh, mi so nervosa. Fancy me doing Brunhilde in front of opera Brunhilde. Oh, we can't bear it.
Oh, listen, everybody. There are the carol singers.
Good King Wenceslas. How appropriate.
That's the small red-haired choir boy. The one who nearly deafens me in church, Georgie. Don't you hope his voice will crack soon?
Charming.
Yes, quite charming.
Great credit to the choir master.
I do believe...
What do you believe, Georgie?
Oh, nothing. Look, excuse me a moment. Nobody move. I'm just going out to see that the singers have a bit of supper in the kitchen before they go.
His trembling legs can scarcely carry him along the passage to his front door, and he opens it to the carol singers.
Therefore, Christian men,
There are half a dozen men
wealth our rank possess,
and one very tall, cloaked, handsome woman.
shall yourselves find blessing.
Will you all come through to the kitchen, gentlemen?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
The nice warm stove.
Olga, divine, Olga. What a lovely surprise for everybody, especially me. Mrs. Weston thought your voice very well trained.
Oh, no.
Oh, do come in soon, won't you?
Yes. All flourishing.
Swimming. Lucia hoped your voice would crack soon. Oh, but it's all been lovely. And it's snowing. Oh, what a Christmas night.
Soon after dinner, Georgie's holly-decked hall begins to fill up with merrily expectant guests. And then, Foljambe sounds a gong.
Ladies and gentlemen! Ladies and gentlemen! Would you kindly take seats in the drawing room? A tableau entertainment is prepared.
Everything goes off perfectly. And an hour later, one Brunhilde is being extremely kind to the other as they sit together.
Dear Miss Braceley, you express so much by singing. You're so lucky there. I'm bound to say, I had qualms when Peppino insisted we should do Brunhilde and Siegfried, lacking your superlative gift. I said it would be so terribly difficult to suggest her just with the physical presence.
But it was wonderful. And you thought all those poses out for yourself. Marvellous.
Ah, if ever I had seen you do it, I'm sure I should have picked up some hints. And
kind.
Siegfried, won't you give a little word for our dear Siegfried?
Oh, yes.
Peppino.
Did you call, Cara?
Yes. Miss Braceley and I were just talking about your portrayal of Siegfried.
It was much more impressive than some of the Siegfrieds I've sung with.
Oh, how very kind of you to say so, Miss Braceley. Praise from an artiste like yourself is... Oh, praise indeed.
Oh, thank you.
And in the King Coffetto tableau, didn't dear Georgie look regal?
Yes, indeed.
I was so glad after the strain of Brunhilde to have my back to the audience. And Mary, Queen of Scots now. The shrinking of the flesh and the resignation of the spirit. That is what I tried to express. You must come and help me next time I attempt this sort of thing.
Well, if I am here, I'm sure I should be delighted,
Gracious,
Mrs.
how
Lucas.
late it is. We must have sat very long after dinner. Why were not you asked to dinner, I wonder? Well, I shall scold Georgie for not asking you. Ah, there is dear Mrs. Weston going away, and Colonel Boucher too. I must say good-night to them. They would think it very strange if I did not.
Yes, and I must be leaving too. I haven't enjoyed Christmas Day so much for years.
Goodbye, Mrs. Weston.
Oh, yes, goodbye, Mrs. Weston.
Goodbye, Colonel.
Goodbye, Colonel. Thank you so much for coming. It has been nice.
Bye, Robert, Georgie.
Goodbye, Daisy.
Good night. Keep close under the umbrella, Daisy. The snow is positively tumbling down.
They can't hear us now, Robert, so stop. Now, what is it? Out with it. What was all that about muslin and false noses?
I only said that we were fortunate in a medium who, after all, you picked up at a vegetarian restaurant. I suppose I may indulge in general conversation. If it comes to that, why did you talk about exposure in the papers?
General conversation, so that's all, is it?
Yes.
Well, if you want to know what I think, it is that you've got some secret.
And if you want to know what I think, it is that I know that you have.
I hate concealment. Robert, I found yards and yards of muslin and a pair of Amadeus eyebrows in that woman's bedroom the very day she went away.
And I read in Todd's News that she was fined last Thursday for holding a séance at which a detective was present. He seized Cardinal Newman by the throat, and it turned out to be that woman.
When you thought that the chimney was on fire, I was burning muslin.
When you thought the chimney was on fire, I was burning every copy of that wretched paper that I could get my hands on. Oh, do let's go home.
We must talk it over. No one knows a word except you and me.
Not one, dear. But there are suspicions.
Oh, dear.
Pillson suspects, for instance. He saw me buy up all the copies of Todd's News. At least he was hanging about when I bought them.
Yes, Georgie suspects something, but luckily he doesn't know what he suspects. Here we are. Have you got the key?
Yes, here somewhere.
Now, whatever happens, nobody must ever know. We must let them think we still hear from the princess. And in a few months, I might even ask her to visit us again. That would really put them off the scent.
Shall we get in out of the snow, my dear?
The next week is a busy one. Lucia's house, so lately a desert, suddenly breaks out into all manner of edifying gaieties. And out of all the dinners and music parties and recitations, there is none to which Olga is not bidden, and none at which she fails to appear. So Riseholme flocks back to the Hurst, like sheep that have been astray, for it is certain to find Olga there. And often Lucia will say,
One little song, Miss Bracely? Just a stanza? Or am I trespassing too much on your good nature?
Oh, no.
Where is your accompanist? I declare I'm jealous of him. I shall pop into his place someday. Oh, Georgino, Miss Bracely is going to sing us something. Is not that a treat? Shh, please. Shh. Ladies and gentlemen, shh.
And she rustles to her place, and sits with the farthest away expression ever seen on mortal face, while she trespasses on Miss Bracely's good nature. On the last day of the year, Georgie is putting a few final touches to his watercolour portrait of Olga. He means to give it her tomorrow as a New Year's gift, but does not intend to tell her that at present.
There. I believe it's finished. Look.
Oh, Georgie, may I?
Yes.
Oh. But it's lovely.
I shall have it framed and put it in my drawing room.
Oh, yes. It will look nice there. Oh, really, Georgie, it's very clever of you.
Oh, thank you.
Georgie, I've got a piece of news for you.
No. What is it? Is it about the princess?
Well, no. But you know what you ought to have done? You ought to have ordered another copy of Todd's News at once.
Oh, I know I ought. But I couldn't get one when I thought of it afterwards. That was tarsome. I feel sure there was something about the princess in it.
And you can't get anything out of the Quantocks?
No, I laid plenty of traps for them.
What sort of traps?
Well, the other day I said suddenly, is it true that the princess is coming to stay with Lady Ambermere? It wasn't a lie, I only asked.
Yes, and then?
Well, Robert gave an awful twitch. Oh, not a jump exactly, but a twitch.
Yes.
But Daisy was on the spot and said, that would be nice. I wonder if it's true. The princess didn't mention it in her last letter. And then he looked at her approvingly. Oh, there is something there. No one shall convince me otherwise. Well, what's the matter?
Oh, it's all so delicious. I never knew before how terribly interesting little things are. The Guru, who was a curry cook, the Quantock secret, Mrs. Weston and the Colonel's romance. Oh, and to think I believed I was coming to a backwater.
Well, what was the news that you were going to tell me?
Georgie, I've just accepted an offer to sing in America, a 4-month engagement at £50,000 million a night. A penny less and I wouldn't have gone. But I really can't refuse. Oh, it's all been so sudden. But they wanted to produce Lucrezia there before it appears in England. And then I come back and sing in London all the summer. Oh, honey.
When do you go?
In about a fortnight.
Oh.
Why don't you come too? My husband thoroughly approves. We both like you, you know. It would do you no end of good. You'd get out of this darling twopenny place. We would all go inside a nutshell. Come for a couple of months, anyhow. And of course you'll be our guest. Please.
The world at this moment grows absolutely black for Georgie, and it is by this that he knows who, for him, is the light of it. He shakes his head.
Why can't you come?
Because I adore you.
An awful flatness succeeds Olga's departure. The only news Georgie cares about during the next few months is news from America, and he has a small packet of that in his dressing-room drawer, done up in a pink riband. Riseholme, naturally, takes a great deal of credit for the success of Lucrezia in New York, since it so rightly considers that the real cradle of the opera was here, where Olga Bracely tried it over for the first time. Lucia seems to remember this better than anybody, and she often speaks of all sorts of things, of which no one else has the faintest recollection.
How well I recall discussing music with dear Signor Cortese, and how he asked me where I had my musical training. Such a treat to talk Italian with a Roman, non è vero, Peppino?
Oh, sì. I remember you saying so at the time,
What
Chiara.
a wonderful evening it was.
Olga has been appearing as Brunhilde again in New York.
Do you remember, Georgino, when we did our tableau? Dear Olga was so simple and unspoiled. She came to me afterwards and asked me to tell her how I'd worked out my scheme of gestures. And I was glad, very glad indeed, to give her a few hints.
The joyful word goes round Riseholme one March morning that the earliest flower is in bloom in Perdita's garden, that corner of Lucia's plot which harbours only the spring flowers enumerated by that Shakespearean foundling. Georgie intends to go to see this flower out of mere politeness, but as he crosses the green on this warm, windy day, Mrs. Quantock comes hurrying out of the post office with a small packet which she is opening as she walks. She is so much absorbed that she doesn't see Georgie, though she passes quite close to him. And as she does so, she drops a small paper, which Georgie picks up. He means to give it back to her, but it has printing on it.
Increase your height.
Georgie quickens his step, and the old familiar glamour brightens round him.
Mrs. Quantock? Oh, dear, you dropped your box of pills. How
Georgie, how you startled me. Do help me pick my lozenges up.
Yes, you dropped this bit of paper as well.
Oh, that is kind. Did you read what it says?
Well, I couldn't help it.
Oh, well then, I shall let you into the whole secret. It's the most wonderful invention and increases your height, whatever your age is, from 2 to 6 inches. Fancy.
I think I've got them all.
There are some exercises you have to do, but rather like those yoga ones. And you eat 3 lozenges a day, and then you begin to shoot up. Only a guinea. What fun when Robert sees that I am taller than he is. But now, not a word. Don't tell dear Lucia whatever you do. She is half a head taller than I, and it would be no fun if everybody grew from 2 to 6 inches.
It's too wonderful. I shall watch you. Here we are. Look, there's Perdita's first flower. What a beauty. And there's Lucia admiring it herself.
Ah, dear Lucia, what a wonderful Perdita blossom.
Is it not? That shows spring is here. Primavera. Glorious. Molto glorioso. Any news? Come in, both of you.
Is next week very full with you, dear Lucia?
Let me just glance at my diary. Monday, dear Lady Ambermere. Tuesday, yes. Wednesday. No, I'm doing nothing on Wednesday. Why?
I hope that my dear friend, Princess Popovsky, will be staying with me.
Oh.
Do get over your prejudice against spiritualism and give it a chance. Come to our séance on Wednesday. You too, of course, Georgie.
Oh, thank you.
I know better than to invite Lucia without you.
Lovely. That will be lovely. Most interesting. I shall come with a perfectly open mind.
And what's going to happen on Tuesday, Lucia? All I know is that I've not been asked. Me's offended.
Ickle surprise. You're not engaged that evening, are you? Nor you, dear Daisy? That's lovely. 8 o'clock. No, I think 1:45. That will give us more time. I shan't tell you what it is. And now, shall Lucia play you just a little musica?
Oh, yes, indeed.
Yes. I've just been toying with a morsel of Divino Mozartino, but I think Perdita's first bloom deserves the master. Come along.
And repairing with her guests to the music room, Mrs. Emmeline Lucas, Queen of Riseholme, resumes her rightful throne. She seats herself at her piano, and gazing at the picture of the master which hangs above her Steinway Grand, begins to play the first movement of the Moonlight Sonata.
Noble Beethoven, what a majestic mind.
As Lucia plays, Mrs. Quantock wonders how much taller she will be by Tuesday next. She discreetly extracts a lozenge from the box and pops it into her mouth in order to begin growing at once. It tastes rather bitter, but not unpleasantly so.
In Lucia Resurgent, the last of 5 parts of Queen Lucia, our comedy series based on the novel by E F Benson, the narrator was Aubrey Woods. Lucia was played by Barbara Jefford, Georgie by Jonathan Cecil, Olga by June Tobin, Peppino, David Garth, Foljambe and the vicar's wife, Helena Breck, the newsagent, Clive Panto, Colonel Boucher, Bernard Brown, Mrs. Weston, Margot Boyd, and Daisy and Robert Quantock, Jane Wenham and Anthony Newlands. The pianist was John Owen Edwards. Queen Lucia was dramatised for radio by Aubrey Woods and directed by John Cardy.